Chapter 1196. Tai Butian was feeling awkward. She and this guy's mother were martial sisters, but she had fallen in love with this guy. She couldn't bring herself to do this. Now that everything was out in the open, what should she do when they met? It was hard for an ugly daughter-in-law to avoid meeting her in-laws. This guy actually said something like that. He really didn't know what was good for him. Thinking of that martial sister come mother-in-law, Tai Butian couldn't help but feel embarrassed. I heard that my mother met you? Chu Yang stood up, holding his stomach. He tilted his head and sized up the beauty in front of him. Tai Butian felt bitter. So it was indeed my martial sister who told you? Chu Yang denied. Definitely not. Chu Yang thought to himself. Although his mother also said it, the first person to say it was not her. Tai Butian snorted. Then it was Qianqian. Chu Yang sighed and said, it was Qianqian. Qianqian found me. Then in a battle, she took a fatal blow for me. On her deathbed, she told me about you, Sai. How is Qianqian? Tai Butian was shocked. She grabbed his wrist. On her deathbed? What about her? She is still unconscious. I need to find the right medicine to wake her up, said Chu Yang. Tai Butian felt a little relieved. She gritted her teeth and said, Chu Yang, if you let Qianqian down, then you really shouldn't. This girl is too silly. She and Wu Qianqian were in the same boat. At this moment, when she realized that Wu Qianqian actually didn't forget to remind Chu Yang about this matter before she died, she couldn't help but feel grateful. Although she had never thought of accompanying Chu Yang from the start, and had never thought of keeping Chu Yang for herself, how could she not have fantasized about it? Which young girl didn't want to be together with the person she loved for the rest of her life? Even though Tai Butian was a ruler, she also had the same feelings of a girl. She also had dreams. It was just that she didn't want to make things difficult for the person she loved, so she restrained herself. Wu Qianqian's words pierced through the last layer of window paper. At this moment, the door of the imperial study opened with a creak. A small figure staggered in. He raised his head and said in a childish voice, Are you guys done? I regret. This shout was like a thunderclap in spring. The two of them immediately panicked. They quickly separated and nervously checked their clothes. It was as if a couple had been caught red-handed by their husband or wife. Chu Yang turned his head to look, and saw that the little guy was staring at him curiously with his black eyes. He was scrutinizing Chu Yang with curiosity. Chu Yang blinked, and felt that something was wrong. He almost suspected that he had seen wrongly, but when he took a closer look, it was indeed correct. Yes, this little fellow who looked exactly like him was indeed looking at him with a curious and scrutinizing gaze. It was as if he had seen a piece of pork in the market, and was hesitating whether he should buy it and bring it home. How could a little child have such a gaze? Minister Chu felt a little dizzy. However, she saw the little fellow trying his best to walk over step by step. He was still a little shaky. He walked to Tai Butian's side and hugged her calf. Then he raised his head and said, Mother, I'm hungry. It was only then that Tai Butian remembered that in her panic, she had chased everyone out of the bedchamber. To think that the Grand Highness had actually come over on his own, without anyone looking after him. Little Yang, how did you find this place? Tai Butian was also a little dizzy. She picked up her son and asked. Her son seemed to have only learned how to walk for 3 months. Moreover, the little fellow was a little lazy. He had never walked such a long distance by himself. Is this very difficult to find? The 1-year-old little fellow's round eyes were actually somewhat disdainful. Mother, you're either in the diligent government hall, in the morning court, or in the bedchamber. Most of the time, you're in the imperial study. Tai Butian's eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. The little fellow spoke in an organized manner. Ever since he learned how to speak, this was the first time she had seen him speak so much. Tai Butian had been worried for a long time that he might stutter. Now this little fellow actually spoke so fluently. Chu Yang had originally wanted to go up and tease him immediately, and then quickly close the distance between him and his father, and successfully nurture a fatherly relationship. Finally, they would jointly attack Tai Butian. Chu Yang knew very well that children were always the greatest weapon against women. As long as his son was willing to leave with him, then Tai Butian would have to leave even if she didn't want to. Even if she didn't want to accept it, she would have to accept it. But before he had time to sit up, he heard these words. Suddenly, he stood still as if he had been struck by lightning. He clearly heard the sound of his jaw hitting the ground. This is the speech of a 1-year-old child. This tone. He's practically an experienced person. Minister Chu was flabbergasted. He turned his head to look, and saw that the young man was looking at him with his big round eyes. He coughed dryly and said, "Little Yang. Cough cough her. Do you know me?" The little fellow rolled his eyes and ignored him. Tai Butian was about to call the palace maids to prepare dinner. Chu Yang asked curiously, "Can't you just feed him milk?" The moment he heard about feeding milk, the little fellow's eyes lit up. Tai Butian's face flushed red. She snorted and said, "Once a child is 1 year old, he can't be fed milk. To train a child's willpower, we have to start from weaning. You don't know anything. What nonsense are you spouting? These are the rules of the imperial family's training program." The moment the little fellow heard that he couldn't be fed milk, he immediately lowered his head dejectedly. Chu Yang was flabbergasted. He can't be fed milk when he's 1 year old? What kind of absurd statement is this? This means this child has really suffered by your side. Tai Butian was enraged. "My son, you've suffered by following me? What do you know? This little rascal is the reincarnation of a lazy worm. Other than the few months when he first learned how to crawl and walk, he was a little more lively. Now if he can sit, he definitely won't stand. If he can lie, he definitely won't sit. If he can walk, he definitely won't run. I really don't know who he took after for his laziness. He's that awesome." Chu Yang was flabbergasted. "Give it to me." Tai Butian stretched out her hand. "Give what to me?" Chu Yang was confused. "That piece of jade." Tai Butian's face flushed red. She gritted her teeth. "Are you going to let me go out like this?" Oh. Chu Yang hurriedly took it out and exclaimed, "This is really good stuff. I wonder if I'll turn into a woman if I wear it?" Tai Butian rolled her eyes at him. She wore the jade around her neck, and instantly regained the demeanor of an emperor. Chu Yang was once again dumbfounded by what he saw. In this aspect, the old clearly couldn't compare to the young. The little fellow was already used to it, and didn't react at all. "Wait here. I'll make the arrangements." Tai Butian waved her hand in an imposing manner. "Yes, your humble servant obeys." Chu Yang bowed in a peculiar manner. The two of them smiled at the same time, instantly feeling as if spring had arrived. Tai Butian walked out, summoned the palace maids and instructed them. Everyone in the palace returned. "Your Majesty, Prime Minister Wang, and the others are worried. They've been waiting outside the hall for a long time." A sharp voice sounded. "I'll go take a look." Tai Butian frowned, and was about to carry her son out. "I'll take care of the child first." Chu Yang hurriedly volunteered. "Go do your things." Tai Butian snorted. She understood his sinister intentions, but she still placed Tai Yang in his arms and hurriedly left. Chu Yang only felt a warm and soft ball land in his arms. In that instant, he was intoxicated and extremely satisfied. "This is my son. Yes, my son." Chuckling, Chu Yang lowered his head and stretched out his mouth, as if he wanted to kiss this pink little face. Smack! The moment he kissed it, he realized that the texture was not quite right. He looked down and realized that he had kissed the back of a small hand. He was stunned to see that this small hand had already placed her palm on the position that he wanted to kiss. She was looking at him with a face full of disgust. Chu Yang scratched his head. This little fellow's reaction was quite fast. He tilted his head and kissed him again. The little fellow blocked this side, that side, that side, that side. But he was a 1-year-old after all. How could he resist? In an instant he lost his guard. His pink little face was kissed until it was covered in saliva. I say, Chu Yang was having fun kissing him, when he saw that the little fellow didn't block anymore. Instead he asked in a strange tone, "Is your mouth clean?" Chu Yang was stunned. "Is my mouth clean?" Kissing here and there. "You feel blissful, but I feel disgusted." The little fellow stretched out a pink little hand and wiped his face forcefully. He tilted his head and rolled his eyes. Chu Yang looked at the little guy in his arms, and was startled. She couldn't help but hold him a little further away to size him up. Not bad, he's only 2 feet long. At most he weighs 15 pounds. Such a little thing. If he can speak a complete sentence, he's already a genius. How can he speak with a similar tone as me? I'm a clean person. The little fellow stretched out a finger and pointed it straight at the tip of Chu Yang's nose. He accused him seriously. In the future, without my permission, you are not allowed to kiss me. Chu Yang was confused. He turned to look at the door, anxious to find Tai Butian. Fuck, you gave birth to? What kind of freak was this? You little fellow, do you know who I am? Chu Yang frowned and looked at the little fellow closely. I've heard of you for a long time. The little fellow was in his arms. His two chubby little hands were hugged in front of his chest. He raised his hands and shook them. Then he cupped his hands in greeting. Chu Yang. Yes, my father. Chu Yang's shock was no small matter. He almost let go of the little fellow and let him fall to the ground. His two eyes widened into two round bells. You know me? Of course. The little fellow rolled his eyes. How did you know me? Chu Yang's eyes almost fell out of their sockets. Sigh. My mother has never worn female clothes in front of others before. Secondly, when she sleeps, she often calls your name in her dreams. Little Tai Yong rolled his eyes. And I was born. The little fellow looked at Chu Yang unhappily. Old Chu, do you understand? Old Chu. Chapter 1197. What the little guy said was not wrong at all. But was this something that a child who was not even 1.5 years old could say? Oh! Chu Yang facepalmed. He was truly devastated. Who hadn't seen a 1-year-old child before? Which one wasn't full of shit and pee? He would call his grandmother Shorty, and his mother Man. He would always wear a diaper in his pants. If he wasn't careful, he would pee all over you. If he was unhappy, he would poop on your pants. At this age, to be able to clearly and fluently address one's relatives and elders, without getting it wrong was already a surprise that exceeded everyone's expectations. But Chu Yang's child was obviously much more advanced than this stage that everyone knew. He was so advanced that he could discuss life with Chu Yang, talk about ideals and talk about picking up girls. Chu Yang felt that this was absolutely ridiculous. He even felt that in front of this monstrous child, he could discuss the general situation of the world and the situation of the heavenly layer with him. It seemed absolutely feasible. Chu Yang had always been the one who shocked others. But this time, Minister Chu was shocked by his 1-year-old and 2-month-old son, whom he had just met for the first time. He was so shocked that he felt dizzy and confused. Now this little guy was in his arms and was being hugged by him. And he was calling him like an old man. Old Chu, do you understand? Chu Yang said hesitantly. I don't understand. How do you want me to understand? Son, you are only 1 year and 2 months old. Tai Yang raised his little face. Old Chu, in this world, there is a kind of person called a genius. This time, Chu Yang nodded like a chicken pecking rice. It seemed that this son of his was not a genius. But he was already a monstrous genius. Son, are you fucking reincarnated from some old man? Chu Yang suddenly looked at this little guy and thought of his reincarnation experience. He asked vigilantly, with that brain of yours, you know about reincarnation? Tai Yang snorted. The old man attached himself to my body. That is not reincarnation, it is possession. And a newborn child is not to be taken away. Do you understand? Once that is done, both souls will be destroyed. Do you understand? Chu Yang scratched his head. Then what's the matter with you? Tai Yang sighed deeply and said faintly, Old Chu, I can only say, this is a very miraculous thing. Yes, it's just that I've been reincarnated. But I'm lucky that my true spirit hasn't been destroyed, and some things haven't disappeared. However, I'm definitely your son. You can rest assured about that. Otherwise, I wouldn't dare to expose myself in front of you like this. Why do you dare to reveal that I'm your father? Chu Yang was very puzzled. The little fellow said deeply, Old Chu, that's because you can accept it. What did you call me? Chu Yang raised his eyebrows. Old Chu. You're already very impressive for me to call you Old Chu. The little guy looked at Chu Yang with a look that said, You should be honored that I called you that. It was a look of approval, commendation and recognition. Little bastard. Call me father. Minister Chu had been called Old Chu 3 times in a row. So he finally reacted. He flew into a rage and roared. Little bastard. You're still so lawless? Old Chu. Old Chu is not for you to fucking call me that. Old Chu is honored. The little fellow's face twisted in despair. You want to scold me and hit me, that's your right. I can't stop you from being a father. But you can't call me a little bastard. I'm your son. If I become a little bastard, then won't you go? Won't I spank your ass into 8 pieces? Before the little fellow's voice died away, Chu Yang had already flipped him over angrily and slapped his fat little butt. Smack. I won't say it. The little fellow tactfully shut his mouth. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. Do you still dare to call me old Chu? Chu Yang was majestic and murderous, showing the majesty of a father. However, looking at the 5 red fingerprints on the little fellow's butt, he felt a little heartache. He comforted himself in his heart. This little bastard is so monstrous, he can withstand it. You're in trouble. After being slapped, the little fellow naturally didn't cry. He only looked at Chu Yang gloatingly. There's a handprint on my butt, right? When mother comes over later, I'll take off my pants for her to see. Then I'll cry. I'm not afraid to tell you. My tears will come at any time. I'll definitely cry myself hoarse. The little fellow looked at Chu Yang gloatingly. Let's see who's the one suffering then. Chu Yang was flustered and immediately retreated. Ancestor. You're not my son, you're my ancestor. Tai Yang's little face was full of naughty smiles. And not only that. If that's all, won't it be too easy for you? You want to build a relationship. I can completely give you a chance to destroy everything. Even if you build a little with your flowery words. As long as I'm here, I guarantee that it will immediately turn into ashes. As long as I'm here, don't even think about hugging the beauty. It's all because of this slap of yours. The little fellow said hatefully. My dear ancestor. Chu Yang wanted to cry but had no tears. Damn it. Other people's children were all beaten and scolded by their fathers as they liked. My child is actually threatening me. Is there any justice in this world? Do you surrender? The little fellow looked playfully at his strict father. Surrender. Chu Yang hung his head dejectedly. Do you think that you can make my palm print disappear, just because of your weak and unconvincing surrender? The little fellow was unforgiving. In your dreams. What do I have to do to make you give up? Chu Yang lowered his voice and gritted his teeth as he asked. 2 conditions. As long as you promise me, not only will I listen to you, but I'll also call you father from now on. Moreover, I'll be responsible for helping you chase after my mother. Yes, your wife. The little fellow stretched out 2 white and tender fingers and waved them in front of Chu Yang. Looking at the 2 waving fingers in front of him, Minister Chu's mood was really complicated. It was as if a bottle of 5 different flavors had been knocked over. Sour, sweet, bitter, spicy, and salty all surged up at the same time. For a moment, he actually felt like crying. If his brothers knew that he had been bullied to this extent by a 1-year-old child, Gu Du Xing, Dong Wushang, and Mo Tianji would probably only have internal injuries from laughing. However, GMO, Luo Kadi, and the others would definitely laugh themselves to death. Especially Rue Butong. He would definitely laugh until his own cultivation level increased greatly. And it would increase greatly. There was no need to doubt this. What conditions? Chu Yang's mood was dry as he raised the white flag. Damn it, I'll deal with you when I'm old. I'm already an old celery seller. How can I not pinch a handful of coriander like you? The first problem is that I have no problem naming myself, right? Tai Yang curled his lips, like the current Tai Yang. It's so unpleasant to hear. No matter how tall and straight a poplar tree is, isn't it still a poplar tree? It's just a pile of firewood. My mother's ability to name is really terrible. Chu Yang's slap was a little itchy. He forcibly controlled his impulse to slap him. He swallowed his saliva and said, We can talk about it. Although my mother did it because she missed you, she can't use my name as a joke. The little guy stretched his legs comfortably. Then he stretched out his chubby little legs that looked like lotuses. He tapped Chu Yang's chin with his big toe and said, Names are very important. It's related to one's future. It's better to be domineering. Domineering? Chu Yang was stunned. Then how about Chu Batian? Vulgar. 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 The little guy was furious. Then I might as well be called Chu Chutian. What's Batian? I can even eat the heavens. Then you'll be called Chu Chu Tian. Chuyang decided. No way. The little guy was completely speechless. Even if you follow the poll, you can't do it like that. Then it's settled. Chuyang said without any doubt. Your nickname will be Go Dan. I object. The little guy kicked his legs. Your objection is invalid. Chuyang snorted. The little guy rolled his eyes. But my mother's name is Tai Butian. I can't have the same name as her. Besides, she nourishes the heavens and I eat humans. What's the point of going against her? This is the sin of being unfilial. Then you'll be called Chu Chitty. Chuyang already had a plan. Little bastard. You actually know the sin of being unfilial. Chu Chu Tian is the most domineering. There won't be anyone with the same name. Ho ho, Chuan. The little guy really wanted to cry. Then what do you want to be called? Chuyang asked modestly. I like Kwang. How about Chu Kwang? The little guy obviously realized that the guy in front of him was not easy to deal with, so he used a negotiating tone. Chu Kwang. Chuyang said. It lacks some charm. Chu Kwang too? The little guy persevered and discussed tirelessly. How about Chu Kwangren? Chuyang fainted. What kind of messy names were these? How did this guy think of them? Then I'll choose these two. The little guy compared and said. How about this? I'll be called Chu Kwangren. Regarding the name change, after you decide that my mother is your wife, you go and tell her that you thought of it. You must decide on it. He had actually made a decision in such a short time. He just said that he could choose one out of the two. But now he did not even have the chance to choose one out of the two. Chuyang, the father, stared with his eyes wide open. Even the right to participate was taken away. The suffocation at this moment was really no small matter. He panted heavily. Fuck your mother, you little bastard. It's really unbearable for me. The little guy snorted and tilted his head disdainfully. If you didn't, you wouldn't have me. Chuyang was immediately blinded by anger. So he spoke without thinking. What do you know? I was fucked at that time. Fucked. The little guy looked at his father in astonishment. Suddenly, he opened his mouth and burst into laughter. Only the heavens knew what kind of scene it was for a 1-year-old child to laugh so boldly, and with such an expression, as if he was about to fall apart, and had a dumbfounded look in his eyes. Chuyang's face was filled with black lines. He hurriedly changed the topic. Why do you have to be called Chu Kwangren? Chapter 1198. Stop, stop, stop. Chuyang hurriedly stopped him. What's wrong? The little fellow shook his head and wagged his tail proudly. What do you mean? Why don't I understand? Chuyang frowned. I understand the first sentence, but this phoenix song laughing at Kong Chiu. What does it mean? Phoenix song. What song is that? Kong Chiu. What is it? A hill full of holes? And this yellow crane tower. Where is it? The little fellow broke down. He stared at Chuyang speechlessly. Such a famous sentence. I really have nothing to say to you. Chuyang touched his nose and thought. Did I embarrass myself? He had no choice but to change the topic. What's your second condition? The second condition is to be as lenient with me as possible. The little fellow pouted. Don't meddle in everything. Also, I should have my own room. If you satisfy these two conditions, I'll help you. Chuyang was stunned. Help me? Help you woo your wife. The little fellow said like an expert. With my help, you'll definitely get twice the result with half the effort. Do you believe me? I believe you. Chuyang nodded heavily. The father and son looked at each other and nodded. Then, the little fellow reached out his small hand, and Chuyang reached out his large hand. The two shook hands in a proper manner. An agreement was reached. At this moment, the palace maid had already prepared the bird's nest porridge and brought it over. A few people followed behind, carrying more than 10 side dishes and various snacks. In front of you, I can only stuff my mouth with food. The little fellow muttered in an almost inaudible voice and started to eat. Chuyang sat on the chair, resting his chin on his hands. He looked at his son and thought about those words. Yes, there was one thing that was undeniable. That was probably a poem. Halfway through, Tai Butian hurried back and saw her son chewing on the table while Chuyang, the father, was actually watching at the side. She was instantly furious. Even if you've never raised a child before, you should just forget about it. You should have seen it before, right? Such a young child. What if he chokes while eating? What if he chokes? Don't you know how to feed him? Upon hearing this, the two men rolled their eyes at the same time. Feed. Chu Yang roared in his heart. Damn it, let this little bastard feed me. You want me to feed him? What a joke. Then, he racked his brains to find an excuse. That's not it. It's just that, we need to train him to be independent from a young age. Otherwise, he would suffer greatly in the future. The sooner he trained, the better. Now it seems, for a child of this size, it was a little cruel, but it was for his long-term future. But it's the best thing. Tai Butian was about to speak when she heard an excited cry from the side. Wow! Tai Butian turned to look, only to see the little fellow's chubby face covered in vegetable juice. With an innocent and excited face, she said, Imperial Mother, this uncle is right. Eating by myself is indeed more delicious than being fed by others. It's really delicious. His face was pure and innocent, childish and adorable. Chu Yang vomited and turned his face away. Good girl, little Yang Yang. Is it really delicious? Tai Butian asked lovingly. That's right, that's right. The little guy nodded his head like he was pounding garlic. Tai Butian heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he gave Chu Yang an apologetic look, as if to say, You're right. I've wronged you. I didn't expect you to be an expert in raising children. Chu Yang pretended to be sanctimonious, and accepted all of them. Then he revealed a confident smile. In fact, he was laughing bitterly in his heart, cursing silently. Little bastard! Tai Butian picked up the teacup and drank some water, watching her son eat lovingly. The next moment, the little fellow said something. Tai Butian choked on a mouthful of water. Imperial Mother, this uncle is so nice. Let's make him my daddy, okay? Tai Butian choked so much that she almost couldn't breathe. This sentence came out of the blue. Let's make him my daddy, okay? Tai Butian turned and looked at Chu Yang questioningly. Chu Yang looked like he was about to break down. He spread his hands, indicating that he didn't do anything. Tai Butian frowned deeply. She murmured, Is this the nature of a father? Puffed. Chu Yang spat out a mouthful of tea. Puffed. The little fellow, who was eating bird's nest porridge, turned his head and spat a mouthful of porridge right on Chu Yang's face. In the afternoon, Tai Butian naturally had to continue dealing with official matters, so the task of taking care of the little fellow still fell on Chu Yang's shoulders. Play with him for a while. If you're interested, tell him some stories. Tai Butian wanted to say something but hesitated. She knew that since her son had such a sword master as his father, his life would probably be stormy. Let Chu Yang tell a few stories for the little fellow to listen to, or perhaps experience it himself. The earlier he could gain some experience. Chu Yang nodded repeatedly. He hurriedly sent the queen away and turned around. The father and son pair stared at each other. Chu Yang immediately dismissed the palace maids and eunuchs. Only then did he remember something. Ever since he came here, he hadn't seen the two of them. What did those two people do? He suppressed this question first. The king of Hell Chu looked at his son. No matter how he looked at him, it was strange. I think, you need to give me an explanation. Chu Yang put his face in front of the little pink face, and said very seriously, Don't use the reason of the immortality of the true spirit to fool me. In this world, there are hundreds of thousands of people who die every day. The number of people that I, your father, have killed with my own hands, is probably 70 to 80,000. If I were to come back like this after death, I believe that no one would be able to accept it. Tai Yang blinked his little eyes and said, I knew that you would definitely have doubts. But of course I have to tell you. When people die, they will be reincarnated. After going through the path of reincarnation, they will be reincarnated as plants, trees, or animals. These don't have any true spirit. The path of reincarnation is to destroy the soul and erase the memories, leaving only a little soul imprint for reincarnation. Of course, they won't remember anything. If everyone could reincarnate like this, then the whole world would have been in chaos. Only when one's cultivation reaches a certain level can he use all his cultivation to transform into soul energy, to protect himself, and pass through the path of reincarnation, to be reincarnated as a human with memories. But in this case, even in the whole world, The number of people who can have this kind of cultivation is definitely not more than one person. The little guy said. Who is this person? Then which one of the people are you? Chu Yang asked. Could it be that this son of his was the reincarnation of some almighty person? This person's name. Even if I told you, you wouldn't know. And I definitely don't belong to any of the people. The little guy thought for a long time and said, I don't know if you've heard of the immortal spirit? Immortal spirit? Chu Yang frowned. I've never heard of it. If you haven't heard of it, it's more troublesome to explain. The little guy blinked and said, You can say that. When the world was first created, a group of almighty people were born. Only after that did the human race multiply. In this space, everything that can give birth to these primitive humans is a unique space. It's called the space of the heavenly way. In the space of the heavenly way, it's filled with a kind of special life energy. It's after this life energy was absorbed that humans were born. This life energy, it's called the origin of the heavenly way. Only trillions of heavenly way origin particles can give birth to one immortal spirit. Every immortal spirit has a complete trajectory of the heavenly way on its body. Of course, after the immortal spirit is born, it's possible that it's absorbed into the cultivator's body and become a part of his cultivation. And as long as one can absorb the immortal spirit, every one of them can later grow into a powerful person who can turn the world upside down. Later on, the heavenly way changed greatly, and the space of the heavenly way suddenly closed. The immortal spirits were sealed in the space. I don't know how many years passed. Immortal spirits were constantly disappearing, because even though the immortal spirits' bodies were so small that they couldn't be seen, they already had their own intelligence. After a long period of loneliness, they would also collapse. I'm the last immortal spirit in the space of the heavenly way. The little guy pointed at his own nose. At this point, Chu Yang was already dumbfounded. He never thought that such a wonderful thing could happen in the world, and such a wonderful thing actually happened to him. At a certain point in time, after I absorbed all the immortal spirits that collapsed along the way, I realized that I could sense the summoning of some powerful cultivators from the outside world. That was the fluctuation that was emitted when the Almighty was engulfing the world. So I tried to penetrate in that direction. I don't know how many years passed, but I suddenly succeeded in breaking through. Then, very happily, I rushed to the summoner. Then I realized that this summoner, he was actually using the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to refine a sword. So I was sealed in this sword, following the owner of the sword to roam the world unhindered. The owner of the sword changed from generation to generation, but no one ever discovered my existence. I had no concept of time at all in that strange place. Anyway, I couldn't get out. After experiencing the changes of one dynasty after another, in the end, this sword was placed on a shelf and was worshipped as a supreme symbol. Then a war broke out. This sword was stolen, and countless people fought over it. At that time, I realized that I was strong enough to break free, so I struggled violently in a battle, and this sword broke. Then I was free. The first thought of the free me was to be a human, because being a human has endless fun. So I wanted to be a human, and not be something that the naked eye can't see anymore. So, after I continued to wander in the human world for many years, I learned some things that I could learn, and I felt that it was enough. So I entered the reincarnation passage without any hesitation. Then when I reappeared, I was here. The little guy looked at his father and said, In this life, it was my first time reincarnating as a human. Chu Yang was dumbfounded, and his brain couldn't wrap itself around it. He said, But you told me the truth the first time we met. This still makes me puzzled. The reason is very simple, because you have the existence of the path of heaven. The little guy was very excited, and his eyes shone. This is the real reason. Chu Yang's heart shook, and he thought of the calamity sword. Wasn't the calamity sword filled with the path of heaven? Chapter 1199. Heavenly Way. Tribulation Sword. Heavenly Way. Chu Yang was lost in thought for a long time. He always felt that there seemed to be a line leading him. Every step he took seemed to be exactly on the same point. Rebirth, tribulation, meeting Butian in Iron Cloud, meeting Du Xing in the Heavenly Army, Spirit Mist and Vitality Spring, becoming sworn brothers. Fighting Qin grew with wisdom and bravery. The sudden appearance of the black demon. At this stage, his thoughts and goals could be said to have been led to the upper three heavens. Then, the heavenly secrets revolved, and Diwu decided to let go. He went up to the upper three heavens, but the first person he met after going up was his father, who paved the way for him to go up to the upper three heavens. And so on. When Bu Luqing and Ning Tianya appeared, and the big clans ruled, the upper three heavens became a matter of course. After going to the upper three heavens, he came out of the southeast and met Zi Xiecheng. He knew about the heavenly imperial court, and Zi Xiecheng's departure seemed to have pointed him in a direction. At that time, he had found out that he had a son in the lower three heavens, and his son's mother and his own mother were actually martial sisters. This was very strange, but he had finally come down with great difficulty, and his son turned out to be some immortal spirit. Moreover, it involved a heavenly law space. What was very obvious was that the heavenly way space was a higher level than the heavenly imperial court. And when such a thing came out of his son's mouth, it made Chu Yang feel even more absurd, as if it was a recurring cycle. If his guess was not wrong, then the tribulation sword was the path of the heavenly way, and should stop when it finally reached the heavenly way space. In this world, there was nothing beyond it. It was as if there was a line in the unseen world that was pulling him towards the peak step by step. But Chu Yang still felt uncomfortable. Facing this kid in front of him, Chu Yang's mood was still very strange. This was a feeling that was both familiar and strange, both intimate and somewhat distant. He couldn't help but sigh deeply. I can't accept what you said. Chu Yang put his son down and let him sit cross-legged on the grass. He sat in front of him and said, "My original plan was to come here, to see an innocent son, to clear the misunderstanding with Butian, and reveal the truth, to let him acknowledge his roots and ancestors. I came full of excitement and happiness, but I saw an evildoer. If you don't tell me, at most, I think that my son is a genius, and I'm very happy about it. But you told me everything, and I'm at my wit's end." That kind of fatherly love. Chu Yang was somewhat melancholic. "Do you understand? I have no choice, because I can't wait any longer," the little fellow said innocently as he spread out his hands. "Can't wait any more?" Chu Yang repeated in bewilderment. "There are two reasons." The little guy stretched his legs, and his childish face was filled with a chilling seriousness. "I've never had a family and I've never had a mother. Now I have one. My mother loved and cherished me wholeheartedly. This feeling let me intoxicated. I was carried by my mother for 10 months after all. That's my mother. I don't want my mother to be hurt. I hope you can give her happiness. But, from the current situation, you are at most a passerby. My mother will never leave with you. You will leave soon. As long as you leave, my mother will not be happy. So, I want you to get my mother's approval in the shortest time possible." To obtain my Nyang's approval, the little fellow said, "Let her have some hope. Live happily. This is my wish." The little fellow said with a voice full of admiration, "Only you can do this. The second reason why I can't wait is, ever since I was born, not long after that Lan Meisien left, people from the Lan clan came. And there were many of them inside the palace and outside the palace," the little fellow said. "They can hide from my mother, but they can't hide from my spiritual perception. At present they are looking into every one of them, if they can be sure. As long as they are certain, they will make a move. You are undoubtedly their biggest target now. They must already be suspicious of you." The little fellow said, "In the lower three heavens, it will undoubtedly be difficult for you to do anything. If we are controlled, it will be even more difficult for you. Furthermore, they've been preparing for more than a year. You have no chance of winning at all if you're caught off guard. So, although I know that talking to you like this is shocking, I have no choice but to tell you in advance. If you die, and you die in the lower three heavens, my mother will really break down." The little fellow muttered, "I don't want my mother to break down." Chu Yang was exasperated. Just as he felt a little teachable, and a kind of as expected of my son. He knows how to think for his father at such a young age. How filial. He was completely destroyed by this sentence. It turned out that this little rascal still didn't want his mother to be sad. But, the Lan clan. Two rays of cold light shot out from Chu Yang's eyes. This Long clan really didn't know what was good for them. They had actually set their sights on this place. Chu Yang was extremely smart. Once he heard this sentence, he completely understood everything. Lan Meixian was Tai Butian's teacher. She saw Heavy Pill at Tai Butian's place. And Lan Meixian was from the Long clan, facing the Tribulation Sword Master. The Long clan was one of the first big clans to bear the brunt. How could they not have made preparations? Therefore, she had started to make preparations in advance. Tai Butian wouldn't say who he was, of course, and Chu Yang could understand that the Long clan kept it a secret and wouldn't deal with Tai Butian's mother before things were clear. He reckoned that the Long clan had the same idea as the Li clan, to become one of the tribulations and continue to be glorious for 10,000 years. No matter what, under this premise, they had to give way. Moreover, with the master-disciple relationship between Tai Butian and Lan Meixian, the Long clan already had this initial condition. If they knew who the Tribulation Sword Master was, then with the Long clan's means, there were thousands of ways to establish a relationship with him, and then logically become a tribulation. This was the Long clan's wishful thinking. And at that time, the master-disciple relationship between Tai Butian and Lan Meixian would become an even more indestructible bond. Tai Butian didn't know, Chu Yang didn't know. Then, this plan was almost 100% successful. No matter from which aspect, there was no possibility of failure. It was just that the Long clan never dreamed that their plan, which they thought was flawless, would actually fail in the hands of a little child who had just turned one. I know, said Chu Yang deeply. Then I'm relieved, said the little fellow very happily. Now you don't have anything else to do, right? Chu Yang raised his eyebrows. No. What do you want to do? Asked the little fellow warily, just making a few changes to the agreement just now. Chu Yang said lightly. First, naming is the matter of the parents. There has never been a child who named himself, so the name you gave is invalid. For the time being, you will still be called Tai Yang. In the future, after you acknowledge your ancestors and return to the clan, I will give you a name. You're cheating. The little fellow was dumbfounded. He never thought that this old man of his would burn the bridge after crossing the river. As for your nickname, from now on, you will be called Dan Dan, said Chu Yang. This name is not bad. No. The little fellow wanted to cry but had no tears. You have to do it even if you can't. Chu Yang pursed his lips. I'll tell my mother that I want to ruin all your plans. I'll do what I say. The little fellow threatened fiercely. I'm not afraid. If you're not afraid that your mother will be sad, you can even sell your father. Chu Yang said calmly. It's rare for you to be so sensible. You know how to care for your mother at such a young age. Not bad, not bad. Let me tell you, you're not allowed to be disobedient in the future. If you're disobedient, I have ways to make your mother heartbroken. The little fellow was dumbfounded. Although he knew a lot, this was the first time in his life that he had reincarnated as a human. He was only a theoretical giant. In reality, he was still inexperienced. In a face-to-face confrontation with a wily old fox like Chu Yang, he was immediately defeated. You don't keep your word. The little fellow's face twisted. This is the first lesson I'm teaching you. As long as you're strong, you can go back on your word. Just like now. I can beat you up if you don't keep your word. But you can't do anything if I don't keep my word. Chu Yang laughed mischievously. Son, you should learn a little. You bragged quite a lot just now. But bragging too much without any strength can only be a joke. Do you understand? Chu Yang asked with his eyebrows raised. I understand. The little fellow's pink face was a little twisted. Wait for me to grow up. You're moving. Aren't you going to call me father? Minister Chu raised his chin. Son, you're still too inexperienced to fight with me. Father. He had to call him father sooner or later. What was the difference between calling him father earlier or later? Although it was a little embarrassing to be forced to call him father, this was his father. It didn't seem to be embarrassing. Well, good Dan Dan. Chu Yang nodded approvingly. Father, can I not call you Dan Dan? The little fellow was completely soft. This problem. Chu Yang smiled deeply and faced his son's fawning eyes. No. The little fellow lowered his head dejectedly. When your mother comes later, you know what to say, right? Chu Yang was very proud. I know. Good, since that's the case, I'm in high spirits now. I'll tell you a few stories to play with. Chu Yang said with a smile. At the same time, he filtered the stories in his heart. Yes, personal experiences that could be used as a reference for his son, and could be understood. After 4 or 5 stories in a row, the little fellow listened until he yawned. What's wrong? Is it not good? Minister Chu asked. Father, these. The little fellow was speechless, and was a little mad. Tell stories. Why are you telling these? My experience with that sword is not as much as what you're telling me, right? He told a few more. The little fellow finally couldn't bear it anymore. He revealed a cute smile, and climbed up with his 2 short little hands. He said innocently, Father, let me tell you a few stories. Chapter 1200. When Tai Butian returned from the court meeting, what she saw was the scene of a loving father and son. She saw Chu Yang carrying his son, and walking to and fro in the imperial garden. The two of them seemed to be talking nonstop. It must be hard on him. Such a grown man actually chatting so happily with such a child. Tai Butian felt a surge of warmth in her heart, and quickly walked over. She suddenly felt that something was wrong, because Chu Yang's voice was so low that it was almost inaudible from afar. He was actually asking nonstop. What happened after that? After that? When they saw Tai Butian return, both father and son shut up at the same time. What after that? Tai Butian asked doubtfully. After that? Ha! Chu Yang laughed dryly. Rubbing his nose, he said, I told the little fellow a story and deliberately left the ending untold, so that he could guess it himself. In the end, he was too stupid and couldn't guess it. Tai Butian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You tested such a big child like that? She was rather speechless. Chu Yang coughed a few times and said, he started training from a young age. As the saying goes, education should start from a young age. The little thing in Chu Yang's arms turned his face away, unable to bear the sight. Tai Butian rolled her eyes at him, and took the child from his arms. She flew into a rage at once. You didn't give him any water? Look at how dry his lips are. Chu Yang was sweating. He was so engrossed in listening to the story, that he actually forgot about this. However, this journey to the west story was indeed pleasant to listen to at night. Under the little fellow's strong request, he and Chu Yang stayed in the same room, leaving Tai Butian alone in the room. However, Tai Butian was still very happy. This father and son pair really bonded quickly. It had only been an afternoon, and they had already developed to such an inseparable state. Of course, the happiest thing was, Chu Yang had actually gained his son's approval so quickly. For 3 consecutive days, everything was calm and peaceful. In these 3 days, Chu Yang would sometimes coax the child. Sometimes, he would go to the Golden Palace to listen to politics. The feeling in his heart also grew stronger by the day. In these few days, he discovered Tai Butian's good points. There were simply too many. In the past, when they were together, Tai Butian also had countless good points. But at that time, he had, after all, observed her from a man's perspective and thoughts. But now that he was looking at her from a different angle, Chu Yang realized just how difficult it was for a woman to achieve what Tai Butian had achieved. Tai Butian was very open-minded. She would be able to find a solution to anything that could be solved on the same day. It definitely wouldn't be delayed until tomorrow. Even if there were some difficulties, he would still strive to overcome them. There were some issues that the officials couldn't come to an agreement on, but Tai Butian would make a decision on her own. Some were more complicated. He also ordered an investigation to be carried out within 1 day. Then it would be done. Rewards and punishments were clear. Rewards and punishments were given simultaneously. It cleverly took care of everyone. It made it so that the several small groups in the court could not be formed, nor could they be separated. They could only exist by relying on each other. In front of her son, she achieved unity even more. When Chu Yang was around, she was a loving mother. When Chu Yang was not around, she was the combination of a strict father and a loving mother. In front of Chu Yang, she was a woman who was deeply in love with Chu Yang. I love you, but I won't lose my independence because of my love for you. I am as gentle as water to you. But it doesn't mean that I won't survive without you. I am tolerant of you. I won't force you or force you. Everything is up to you. No matter what the outcome is, I will have no regrets. But in front of the officials, she was a ruler who dominated the world and dominated the world. She was indisputable and unquestionable. She had a pure heart and spirit, as well as courage and heroism. She could run the world, and also handle her own feelings reasonably. She even dared to face her own heart directly. Cute, intelligent, independent, generous, open-minded and upright. Not to mention her beautiful face, slim figure, elegant temperament and sense of propriety. She was peerless and a national beauty. Such a woman should be the most ideal wife for any man in the world. There was no one like her. After interacting with her these few days, Chu Yang realized that he had fallen deeply in love with this cute woman. Her depression, her pain, her joy, her bliss, her satisfaction, her regrets, her achievements, all of them made Chu Yang's heart throb incessantly. With Tai Butian's sharp mind and intelligence, she could naturally sense the changes in Chu Yang's mood and emotions these few days. Therefore, the emperor's mood had been very good and joyful these few days. Even when sitting in the majestic hall, the emperor's joy could not be concealed. That was a feeling of bliss, when the long-awaited love slowly approached again. No matter who it was, they would not act as if nothing had happened. In these few days, those people from the Lan clan, who were in hiding did not appear nor did they take any action. But Chu Yang knew that they were in the dark, using various methods to observe him. After all, these people might not have seen him before, and they might not know that he was Chu Yang. His sudden appearance in the imperial palace could only be said to be an accident. He was the biggest suspect, but they didn't dare to act rashly without concrete evidence. After more than a year of planning, if they alerted the enemy because of this and caused Tai Butian's strong disgust, then even if the tribulation sword master really came in the future, they would lose some kind of hope. Pillow talk was the most powerful thing in the world, especially pillow talk of Tai Butian's level. It could dominate the world. So they were waiting for an opportunity. Chu Yang was also waiting for an opportunity. After sleeping with their son for a few nights, both father and son felt extremely miserable. The younger one felt that the flesh on his father's body was too hard, and there was no warmth at all. Sleeping in his father's arms was much more comfortable than sleeping on his own. The older one felt that this little guy was too delicate, and did not dare to turn over, while sleeping with him in his arms, fearing that he would crush him if he turned over. Such a delicate little thing would definitely not be able to withstand his weight of more than 50 kilograms. In particular, some folklore said that some children were accidentally crushed to death by their parents not long after they were born, or choked to death while drinking milk, suffocated to death, and so on. Such things are definitely not bragging. At least, such things have happened here before. Chu Yang did not dare to move even more. Sleeping like this for a whole night really made all the bones in his body creak. It was even more tiring than a big battle. This night, Tai Butian was leaning against the lamp and reading memorials in her pajamas. She suddenly looked deep in thought. She frowned in thought. Then, she raised her eyebrows and quickly gave instructions. Then, she changed to the next one. Chu Yang saw that Tai Butian had nothing to worry about. She could save time to deal with official matters. It was already late at night, and she was about to finish dealing with them. Tai Butian's lips curled into a smile. Even though it was late at night, even now, Tai Butian had not taken off that piece of jade. She still looked like a handsome young emperor, who was diligently dealing with official matters. Right at this moment, she suddenly heard a knock on the door. "What's the matter?" Tai Butian asked authoritatively. "Your Majesty, your humble servant Chu Yang requests an audience." A strange voice came from outside. Tai Butian was stunned. Chu Yang? Why did he come over at such a time? Wasn't he accompanying her? Could it be? At the thought of this, she hurried forward to open the door. Only to see Chu Yang standing alone at the door. She couldn't help but be startled. "What's the matter? That little guy chased me out." Chu Yang rubbed his nose and smiled bitterly. "I have nowhere to sleep." Tai Butian was stunned. A long time ago, the little guy had been making a fuss about wanting a room to himself. Tai Butian had never agreed. How could such a young child have a room to himself? She was worried. But Minister Chu was directly chased out this time. This was still somewhat out of her expectations. I'll go over and take a look. Tai Butian walked out. Not long after, Tai Butian shook her head helplessly and came back. As expected, he said that he doesn't feel comfortable sleeping with someone beside him. Then let's give it a try. Chu Yang suggested. Let's try letting him sleep alone? Tai Butian frowned for a long time before she finally said, all right. But I'll have to go over and take a look at him a few times in the middle of the night. As she spoke, she sat down. What is your Majesty busy with? Chu Yang leaned forward with a drooling face. Tai Butian's face suddenly turned red. Only now did she realize that there was such a big problem in her room. Late at night. A lonely lamp. A man and a woman alone. Alone in a room. This was a little inappropriate. You can go to the guard room and make do for the night. Tai Butian suppressed her panic and said in a calm voice. Why don't you go to the imperial study and make do for the night? Chu Yang chuckled. No need. I'm also worried about your Majesty being alone. Tonight, I'll just wait on you and serve you. Chu Yang's voice was very tactful when he said the words serve. In fact, he had repeated them several times. No way. Tai Butian's face flushed red as she rejected him decisively. But Chu Yang had already leaned forward. He reached out and grabbed her hand. But your Majesty said that as long as I change my mind, I can do whatever I want. I didn't say that. Tai Butian glared. But I've already said it. Chu Yang had already pulled the emperor into his arms. Tai Butian's entire body suddenly trembled. It turned out that Chu Yang's hand had already caressed her neck and gently plucked that piece of unfathomable illusion jade off her neck. Instantly, the valiant and heroic young emperor turned into a peerless beauty of unparalleled beauty. Chu Yang's eyes stared at her face without blinking. After a long time he murmured, so beautiful. Tai Butian bit her lip and said, You, don't be too presumptuous. Why aren't you leaving? Chu Yang had already moved closer to her ear and blew a breath of hot air mischievously. He said softly, Little Tian, I realized that I've fallen for you. Tai Butian's delicate body trembled. In that instant, even her ears turned as red as agate. It may be a little fast, but I believe that you can feel it. Chu Yang leaned close to her small earlobe and exhaled gently. That warm breath made Tai Butian's entire body go limp and numb. She heard Chu Yang say, Because we have a very, very deep foundation. What foundation? Tai Butian lowered her head and asked weakly. The foundation is here. Chu Yang raised his head. Look up. Here? Tai Butian was perplexed. She couldn't help but raise her head to take a look. However, the moment she did, she instantly realized that a shadow had appeared in front of her. A handsome face had bent down, and a domineering mouth had covered her lips. Chapter 12:01. The night was as dark as ink. The lonely lamp was as small as a bean. In the bedroom, a man and a woman hugged each other gently. Tai Butian had been cultivating the icy heart jade bone since she was young. Ever since she gave birth and took the heavenly elixir, she had reached the true icy heart jade bone level. Her heart was exquisite and clear, and she could see through everything, especially when other people's attitudes toward her were hiding something, or when their emotions were truly fluctuating. Tai Butian could sense them clearly. In these few days, Chu Yang had kept a distance from her. Although he would occasionally joke around, it was harmless, and he would basically change the topic. Tai Butian was well aware that Chu Yang was looking at her from different angles. Whether it was the way she conducted herself, or any other aspect, Chu Yang was looking at her. But even so, Tai Butian's pride was aroused. I know that you want to find a reason to like me because of your son. But do I have to make you like me? Therefore, Tai Butian didn't give a very positive response to this matter. She just faced it very normally, and did what she usually did very normally. She didn't slack off, but she didn't deliberately show it either. If there was anything unusual, it would be that she deliberately showed some temper. However, Chu Yang's gaze was becoming gentler day by day. Although Tai Beauty Angson was happy that she was slowly conquering her lover, she also felt a little uncomfortable. She kept feeling as if she was a commodity, waiting to be judged on her appearance and everything else. Now, when Chu Yang pushed the door open and entered, Tai Butian had already guessed his intentions. But she kept feeling that it was a little too fast. But she didn't expect that this bastard would hug her after just saying a few words, deceiving her to raise her head, and those domineering lips pressed down on hers. At this moment, her emotions were in complete chaos. Tai Butian's starry eyes were tightly shut. She leaned against Chu Yang's chest. She was half forced to raise her head slightly. Her tender red lips were being ravaged by the man in front of her. Her nose fluttered lightly. Her face was flushed red. Chu Yang's hands, which were gently wrapped around her waist, slowly began to exert force and gradually moved downwards. No. No. Tai Butian tilted her head fiercely. She avoided Chu Yang's hot lips, only feeling weak all over and almost falling. She supported herself on Chu Yang's chest with her hands, and shook her head vigorously. No. It's too fast. Chu Yang didn't force her. He just hugged her slender waist and said, "What's so fast about it?" Tai Butian shook her head frantically. I'm a little scared. Chu Yang smiled. Am I very scary? I'm not going to eat you. Tai Butian only shook her head. His bright eyes looked into Tai Butian's eyes. His movements were very slow but very resolute. It was clear that he was giving her time to react. Consider whether you want to accept me or not. As Chu Yang leaned forward, Tai Butian's body slowly leaned back to dodge. She leaned back with all her might. It was almost parallel to the ground. Her long hair cascaded down like a waterfall. The ends of her hair actually reached the ground. There was no way to retreat any further. Right now, Tai Butian's 2 feet were on the ground, her waist bent backward as if it had been broken. If she retreated any further, she would fall to the ground. His lips were less than an inch away from Tai Butian's petal-like lips. The distance between their eyes was less than 2 inches. He asked softly, "Is that okay?" Tai Butian bit her lip and shook her head. Chu Yang asked again. Tai Butian closed her eyes and shook her head. But just as she closed her eyes, she felt her cherry lips being captured again. That bone-piercing taste that she had experienced before once again assaulted her. She couldn't help but feel her head explode again. She only felt the tip of a nimble tongue prying open her red lips. After a long time, the Emperor's chest heaved up and down. Her breathing was rapid and her face was flushed. Chu Yang raised his head. Maintaining his original distance, he asked softly, "Is that okay?" Tai Butian turned her head away in embarrassment. What kind of question was this? You're asking if it's okay? If she didn't agree, you kissed her fiercely and then asked if it's okay? If she didn't agree, you kissed her fiercely again. And now you're asking if it's okay? What can I do if it's okay? She only felt a warmth on her lips. This guy was actually pressing his lips against hers again. After a long time, she heard Chu Yang ask again softly, "Is that okay?" There was no room for resistance in the face of power. Looks like this guy is bent on making me give an answer. Tai Butian had no choice. She closed her eyes and nodded while her heart was beating like a drum. That's great. Chu Yang opened his mouth and kissed her again. This time, the kiss lasted even longer. The Emperor was head over heels, as if she was in the clouds. But she felt extremely strange. You asked if it's okay? When I didn't agree, you kissed me. Now that I've nodded, you're still kissing me. What's going on? After a long time, their lips parted. Tai Butian panted heavily. She finally struggled to stand up straight and asked, "What did you ask just now?" Chu Yang was stunned. "What did you think I asked you?" Tai Butian's face was flushed red. She pinched him fiercely. "Say it," Chu Yang said. "I asked you just now if you felt okay when I kissed you." Suddenly he smacked his lips and said, "Did you think I asked you if it's okay?" Tai Butian was so embarrassed that she couldn't speak. "I thought you asked me." No wonder this guy continued to kiss me the moment I shook my head. He thought I didn't feel okay. That's not right. But I've already nodded. Why did you still kiss me? Tai Butian was puzzled. That's right. When you nodded, it meant that you felt okay. How can you not try harder? This time, I asked you to continue. Is it okay? There was a mischievous smile on Chu Yang's face. Tai Butian's face was flushed red. She instantly knew that this guy was purely playing rogue. There was no question of whether it was okay or not. It was true that he was teaching her a lesson. Chu Yang, let me ask you. You've only looked at me for 3 days. Don't you think this is a little too fast? Tai Butian asked in a low voice. I just think it's too slow. Chu Yang said regretfully. How much time have I wasted? Tai Butian turned her head and then turned back. She looked deeply into Chu Yang's eyes and said softly, Chu Yang, if there were no children, would you be so fast? Chu Yang stared into her eyes and said, what if we had never met? What if we had 17 or 18 children? Tian, no matter what, it didn't happen. It can't be considered. You're such an intelligent girl. Why would you ask such a stupid question? You might as well say that if you were a man. Chu Yang let out a strange laugh. Tai Butian's face was flushed red, but she said gently, it's my fault. I'm a little petty. Chu Yang looked deeply at her. He smiled and helped her up. Then he helped her to sit down. Tai Butian didn't know what he was going to do. She looked at him blankly. With a flip of his hands, a red candle appeared in Chu Yang's hands. Together with the candlestick, they were arranged neatly. He blew out the light in front of Tai Butian. As the candles lit up, Tai Butian suddenly realized that her room had actually turned into a hazy red color. A thick red carpet had also been laid out on the floor. Just like the bridal chamber of newlyweds, Chu Yang had already placed 2 cups of wine on the table. He unfolded a piece of red cloth and said, Tian, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave for the time being, but I'm not going to let you off. So, I'll have to trouble you a little. Tonight, it'll be our bridal chamber night. Tai Butian's face was flushed red. She said angrily, I didn't agree to marry you. What bridal chamber night? But her heart was warm. He was understanding of my difficulties after all, and didn't force me. Just this sentence of you won't be able to leave for the time being was enough to show how far Chu Yang had thought for her from her position. Chu Yang ignored her and said, Tonight you're my bride. As he spoke, he took a step forward and covered her head with the red veil. I'm sorry to trouble you. Chu Yang was a little apologetic. The wedding of an emperor is so simple. But when you're done with the state affairs, we'll hold another wedding for you in the upper 3 heavens. Tai Butian felt both joy and frustration. She wanted to pull down the red veil, but after thinking about it, she didn't. She only felt her hand being held by Chu Yang. She slowly lowered herself to the ground and kowtowed 3 times. She only thought in her heart, am I marrying myself off just like that? Then, there was a light in front of her. The red veil was lifted by Chu Yang. A smiling and handsome face was looking at her lovingly. He called out softly, Mother. Tai Butian lowered her head, not daring to make a sound. Then she felt a chill in her hand. A cup of wine was stuffed into her hand. Then she saw Chu Yang's arm around her. He said, Mother, it's time for us to cross cups. Tai Butian felt like she was a puppet. She had become a bride in a daze, went through the wedding ceremony in a daze, drank wine in a daze, and turned herself into a certain someone's mother in a daze. Everything was under the command of this groom. There was actually such a wedding in the world. There was only the bride and groom. There wasn't even a single spectator. When the ceremony was over, Tai Butian still felt like she was in a daze. Her face was flushed and her eyes were watery. She was still thinking in her heart, Tai Butian, I'm getting married just like that. What she couldn't deny was that the confusion and fear in her heart were far less than the happiness and nervousness. It was as if a huge rock in her heart had been lifted with a thud. From today onwards, Tai Butian, am also a woman with a husband, and a woman with someone to rely on. Silently, she heaved a long sigh of relief. It was as if all the pressure she had been under since she was born had vanished into thin air at this moment. Mother. Chu Yang took her hand and held her in his embrace. His 2 eyes looked at her deeply. Chu Yang, you? Tai Butian's voice was as soft as a mosquito's. Wrong. You should call me husband. Chu Yang put on a fierce face. Tai Butian opened her mouth, but couldn't say anything. She laughed shyly. What are you laughing at? You're already disrespectful to your husband on your wedding night. See how I'll punish you. Chu Yang pretended to be angry. He slapped hard on the perky bottom of the beauty in his arms. Tai Butian cried out in pain, only to realize that her body was in midair. This foe had already picked her up, and was walking step by step toward the big bed. Tai Butian's beautiful eyes were deep, She didn't struggle. She just looked at the face of the man, who had just become her husband in a daze. There was a faint blissful smile on her lips. Her body was gently placed on the bed. She had just felt the warmth of the blanket when her vision darkened. Chuyang was already on top of her. Tai Butian wanted to say something, but she couldn't say anything. Her mouth had already been sealed tightly. Her hands had just moved a little when they were restrained. Her legs had just moved a little when they were also pinned down. It was a complete suppression. Then a soft sound came from her chest. That was one of her buttons being undone. The next chapter was a little later. It wasn't to whet everyone's appetite. It was just that this pushover scene was really the most troublesome thing for writers. It was too difficult to control the limits. Once they went overboard and were reported, they would be in big trouble. Especially now that they were in the midst of a crackdown. They had to be even more cautious. But but when my temper flares up, I just don't want to let it go. So for today's plot, I even specially argued with the editor several times last night and this morning. So I have to be very careful about what I write next. All along, we've been a big target of reports. Back then, a fantasy book was reported hundreds of times. Because it created a record of being reported. That was the evil monarch from another world that I wrote. Damn it. The second chapter will be late. Everyone please understand. Chapter 1202. Tai Butian looked at Chuyang and felt her outer robe being undone. She became more and more shy. But surprisingly, she didn't move at all. She just looked at Chuyang tenderly at her man. She didn't say anything. But the look in her eyes was as if she had already said 1,000 words. She wanted to give her best side to her lover. It was just that simple, and only that simple. Tai Butian's position in herself had always been very accurate. In front of the court officials, she was the emperor of a generation. No one could question the majesty of an emperor, and no one dared to offend her. If anyone did, they would be struck down like lightning. In front of her son, she was a mother. No status or position could affect her heart as a mother. In front of Chuyang, she was a wife, a woman whose heart belonged to someone else. Talk about the status of an emperor, or being below tens of thousands of people. None of these were necessary. Tai Butian also knew that her status as an emperor might be high and mighty to ordinary people. But to Chuyang, it really wasn't much. However, even if Chuyang didn't care, Tai Butian wasn't willing to show any power or authority in front of the man she loved deeply. Tai Butian had always believed in one sentence. Life was too short. These 4 short words were actually all-encompassing. Any meaning was summarized in these words. But now that she was so cooperative, Chuyang felt that something was wrong. He pressed on top of her and asked, "Why are you so quiet? You're so obedient. It makes me feel a little embarrassed." Tai Butian hugged Chuyang's head, her eyes sparkling like spring water. Suddenly, she looked up and kissed Chuyang on the cheek. She said gently, "Since we've already gone through the wedding ceremony, then Chuyang is Tiantian's husband. Since Tiantian has a husband, her husband is her everything. Then, of course I have to listen to my husband. If my husband wants little Tiantian, how would little Tiantian dare to disobey my husband?" Chuyang pursed his lips and chuckled. "You're the one who said that. You'll listen to everything I say, okay?" Tai Butian's beautiful hair spread out like dark clouds on the pillow. Her swan-like beautiful neck raised slightly, and she bravely looked up to meet Chuyang's gaze. She murmured, "Chuyang, husband." Although the voice was low, Chuyang could clearly hear it. The woman beneath him had a kind of wholeheartedly giving, relying on loving, and relying on him wholeheartedly. This murmur was like a bugle call to charge. Chuyang's blood was boiling. He lowered his head abruptly, and the lips on all 4 sides came together. Tai Butian shuddered all over. She could only feel a pair of hands that were like slithering snakes. Suddenly, his hand reached under her clothes. When his palm came into contact with her delicate skin, she couldn't help but tremble. His hands slowly moved forward, as if he was feeling something. It was as if he was a brave explorer who was advancing towards the peak. She pursed her lips tightly, resisting the strange throbbing in her heart that she had never felt before. She gritted her teeth. When they finally reached the highest point, Tai Butian couldn't help but let out a moan. Her flower-like toes suddenly straightened. Chu Yang went all the way down. She felt the clothes on her body slowly being removed. Slowly. Her wonderful body was already exposed to Chu Yang's gaze. Tai Butian closed her eyes tightly. No matter what Chu Yang said, she refused to open them. She was like a pile of fragrant mud that he could do whatever he wanted with her. But her heart. Suddenly, a kind of fear rose in her heart. She suddenly recalled the time when she cured Chu Yang's poison in the mountains of Beyond the Heavens sect. At that time, it was as if she was going to be torn apart. She really didn't have the courage to endure that kind of intense pain. She had to endure it again. A long time had passed since the incident. The moment she thought about it, she felt so embarrassed that she wanted to die. Plus, there was still lingering fear in her heart. This time it wouldn't be as painful as before, right? Logically speaking, in the palace, no matter if it was the emperor or the princess, after reaching a certain age, they would all have a special nanny. It was also a rule in the palace to teach them some things about human relations. No matter which plane it was, there was no doubt that such a rule existed. But although Tai Butian was a girl, she had been raised as a son since she was young. The old people from back then had all been executed. As Tai Butian's authority grew day by day, who would dare to tell her these things? Besides, Tai Butian was already the master of the entire Iron Cloud nation back then. When the world was at peace, Tai Butian had already swiftly gotten married and even had a child. Who would be so blind as to explain these matters between men and women to an emperor who already had children? Wouldn't that be courting death? If they didn't understand, where did the child come from? So until now, Tai Butian was still in a daze. She only had a rough idea. As for the specific feelings, she didn't know anything at all. The only memory she had was that time when she cured Chu Yang's poison. It was so painful that she almost died. She felt a chill on her body, and the last of her undergarments left her body. Rustling sounds could be heard. It should be Chu Yang taking off his clothes. One had to admit that the speed at which Minister Chu took off his clothes was extremely fast. With a swoosh, it was clean and smooth. Then, he pounced on her. At such a critical moment, Tai Butian recalled the excruciating pain that made her wish she was dead. She suddenly bent her legs and curled up like a big prawn. Ayo! Minister Chu was full of desire as he pounced on her. He had intended to embrace her in his arms. And in the next moment, who would have thought that at this critical moment, the beauty beneath him who had allowed him to do whatever he pleased would suddenly change her position? With a thud, 2 knees hit her lower abdomen. She was stunned at once. What's wrong? Chu Yang felt like his whole body was about to explode. How could he stop at such a critical moment? I'm scared. Tai Butian covered her face pitifully. At this moment, she didn't have the demeanor of a queen descending to the world. What are you scared of? Chu Yang was very puzzled. Pain. Tai Butian muttered softly. Pain. Chu Yang fainted. Tai Butian buried her head in the pillow and said like a mosquito. The last time, the antidote, it hurt so much. Realization dawned on Chu Yang. He said seductively. I promise it won't hurt at all this time. I don't believe you. She buried her head in the pillow and shook it vigorously. Try it and you'll believe me. He continued to seduce her. I'm scared. Come. Don't. Tai Butian curled up her body with all her might, like a quail that had curled up into a ball. Chu Yang was at loggerheads, but there was nothing he could do for a moment. In the end, he finally couldn't take it anymore. He leaped up, no longer caring about the order of things. He directly moved his hands up and down, forcefully flipping this graceful body over. He opened his mouth and covered her red lips tightly, preventing any sound of protest from coming out of Tai Butian's mouth. This didn't seem like a tender and sweet bridal room, but more like a real overlord forcing himself on her. Both of them were gasping for breath. Only when he really couldn't take it anymore did Chu Yang release his mouth. After pausing for a while, he sealed her lips again. Tai Butian only felt that her body was slowly heating up as that pair of strange hands wandered around everywhere. A strange feeling slowly rose up. Slowly, her tensed body started to relax without her noticing. After a long time, Tai Butian let out a muffled groan. 3 million words omitted here. Cough. If I continue writing, I'll have to go to work for the government. The taste of this night was really indescribable. Until a long time later, when Tai Butian's best friend, Wu Qianqian, asked about the taste of today, Tai Butian was still so embarrassed that she wanted to crawl into a hole to hide her face. Because she didn't know anything, she naturally thought that whatever Chu Yang said should be absolutely correct, and she just had to do as he said. Therefore, Minister Chu had exerted himself to the limit that night. Minister Chu enjoyed all kinds of strange and unacceptable things one after another. Before they reached, Her Majesty had already begged for mercy. But after that, she realized that the other party was even more aggressive, and from this night onwards, as long as the two of them were together, tonight's events would repeat and repeat, all the way until many years later. When she was with her sisters, and they were all familiar with each other, they talked about those embarrassing things. It was only then that Tai Butian knew that all those methods and techniques that this damned bastard had used on her all these years were actually very unbearable. In short, very taboo. One time, after drinking wine, Wu Qianqian and the others asked about it. The ladies laughed at her for a long time, causing Sword Master Chu to be disliked by the embarrassed Her Majesty for a long time. But at that time, many years had already passed since then. One night passed. The night was short, and the sun rose high. From then on, the emperor didn't attend morning court. The officials who were waiting for morning court had already waited for a long time, but Her Majesty still didn't appear. Everyone was discussing animatedly. Her Majesty had always been diligent in her work. Such a situation had never happened before since she ascended the throne. There was even one time when she had a high fever and forced herself to attend morning court, but she was still persuaded to go back by the officials. But today was really strange. Her Majesty actually didn't even greet her. The sun had already risen, but Her Majesty didn't move at all. Thus, all the officials begged Lord Feng, the head steward of the imperial palace, to go and ask. As everyone knew, Her Majesty's bedroom was strictly forbidden from outsiders. The security was so tight that it was beyond any other emperor. Not to mention the palace maids, even the guards were all women. Even the eunuchs were not allowed to take a step into the bedroom. With regards to this request, Minister Feng Qiliang also felt awkward. He stood outside the bedroom and asked a palace maid to go and ask while he waited. After a long time, the palace maid came out and said, "Morning court is adjourned today." When the news came back, everyone was relieved. Although they were still a little puzzled, there was an explanation after all, so they dispersed in twos and threes. In the bedroom, Chu Yang was lying down comfortably, hugging a soft and white jade-like body. His face was full of comfort. "I said it doesn't hurt, right?" Someone said proudly. Her voice was like a cat's. "Go to sleep, it's not early anymore." He didn't rest for the whole night. "Not early anymore? I have to go to morning court, oh no." Tai Butian hurriedly sat up, but the moment her body moved, she immediately fell back down with a groan. Only then did she realize that she had no strength at all, as if all the bones in her body had been pulled out. "I've already rejected the morning court for you. Just when we were doing that, you didn't hear it. Didn't you notice that I covered your mouth at that time?" Someone laughed evilly. "You damn it." Chapter 1203. This night, Chu Yang was simply like a dream or a fantasy. Even until now, he still felt like he was dreaming. He really didn't expect that Tai Butian, as the empress of a generation, would actually be completely clueless about what happened under the bed. She hadn't even heard of it before. Therefore, this night was completely led by Chu Yang. No matter what Chu Yang said, she only needed to say, "Isn't this how it is between husband and wife?" This was very normal, so Tai Butian did as she was told. And she was even afraid that she didn't do a good job, and couldn't serve him, as well as other women served their husbands. She was still very nervous and asked Chu Yang shyly, "Can I?" Chu Yang had an extremely comfortable night, and it was also extremely satisfying. But now that the passion had subsided, Tai Butian fell into a deep sleep. Looking at the beautiful woman in his arms, Chu Yang's heart suddenly became heavy. Tai Butian didn't understand, and Chu Yang found it strange. But when he thought carefully about Tai Butian's background, he completely understood. This empress of a generation who dominated the world, an unparalleled beauty, behind that limitless glory, was an extremely tragic background and a pressure that was as heavy as heaven and earth. Although limitless glory, she was really very pitiful. Because of politics, she lost her mother, sister and all her relatives. Because of war, she lost her father. Because of the kingdom's politics, she had no friends. Because of the pressure, she had no childhood. And now, because of him, she first gave herself, and then hid her love. She even became a single mother. If it were any other woman, even if she was mentally strong, she would probably have broken down long ago. But Tai Butian bore it all alone, all the way until now. Chu Yang looked at the woman sleeping peacefully in his arms. That completely relaxed and unreserved expression of trust made his heart ache. In this life, ever since he became the empress, how many days of bliss had she had? Even during that period of time when she had feelings for him, and developed feelings for him, she probably didn't feel much sweetness. Because at that time, he still didn't know that she was a woman. Naturally, he also didn't know that there was a young girl's heart beating for him. Or maybe there was, at the moment when the child was in his arms. Or maybe now, after he came here. After everything was revealed, when she felt that his heart was open to her. Unfortunately, even if there was, it was also so little and so short. What could he give her? Chu Yang sighed lightly. He pulled Tai Butian's delicate body into his arms again, and lowered his head. Looking at this peaceful and blissful face, he couldn't help but lower his head, and kiss the tip of that perky nose again. Tai Butian murmured, and moved a little in his arms. Her rosy lips moved a little, but she didn't open her eyes. She merely shifted into a more comfortable position. She continued to sleep soundly on his shoulder. Tai Butian slept all the way until noon. In all these years, there had never been a night where he could sleep as comfortably and relaxed as tonight. He didn't even have a single dream the entire night. When he woke up, he blinked his sleepy eyes, and was about to get up when he suddenly realized that he was still naked. Tai Butian was completely naked. She couldn't help but feel embarrassed as she recalled the events of last night. Tai Butian's starry eyes flickered as she bit her lip in embarrassment. She spat lightly. Seeing that Chu Yang had fallen asleep right beside her, Tai Butian's heart was suddenly filled with boundless happiness and satisfaction. This bastard, truly fierce. Last night, he made her throw away her armor. She couldn't help but feel like biting Chu Yang when she recalled all those strange positions and methods that Chu Yang had suggested. But when she lowered her head, it turned into a light kiss. I, Tai Butian, can be considered a complete and happy woman from today onwards. Looking at the red candles on the table and the red carpet on the floor, Tai Butian's gaze became blurry. For the first time in more than 10 years, this was the first time she had such thoughts of the bed as so comfortable. I don't want to get out of bed. She felt extremely sluggish, and couldn't help but want to lie down again. Right at this moment, she saw Chu Yang's tightly shut eyes move, as if he was about to wake up. Tai Butian hurriedly put her head back to its original position, and closed her eyes. This fellow had indeed woken up. Actually, he had already woken up when Tai Butian woke up. But he just pretended not to open his eyes. Opening his eyes, Chu Yang muttered to himself. This pretty girl hasn't woken up yet. What a little pig. Tai Butian closed her eyes and scolded in her heart. You're the pig. But she felt a chill on her body. Someone had lifted the blanket, and was looking at her body wantonly. Tai Butian didn't dare to open her eyes anymore. What a pretty little pig. Someone muttered to himself. Tai Butian felt a pair of hands roaming around her body again. This pair of hands seemed to have magical powers. Wherever they went, there would be a scorching heat. Although her eyes were still closed, her face was already flushing uncontrollably. She hasn't woken up yet. That's good, I'll secretly do it first, someone muttered to himself. The next moment, Tai Butian felt someone gently climb up her body again. And then, you. What are you doing? The emperor opened her eyes hurriedly, somewhat flustered. Her body was still limp from last night. Why was he doing it again? Chu Yang was already on top of her body. With a lewd smile he said, Your Majesty, I'm here to serve you. Outside the Forbidden City. In Prime Minister Wang's house. Her Majesty has adjourned the morning court. The senile Prime Minister Wang sat on the old-fashioned wooden armchair. His cloudy eyes stared blankly at his feet as he muttered these words to himself. Opposite him were 4 men in blue. One of them chuckled and said, "She didn't attend the morning court? Hee. Old man Wang, you're not telling the truth. Don't forget, your whole family's bloodline is in my hands." "I know this. You don't have to remind me again and again." Prime Minister Wang panted tiredly and said angrily, "I've already told you all about the important matters of the court. I didn't hide anything." The man in blue snorted and clapped his hands. Another man in blue walked in. The new one was the new butler of Prime Minister Wang's residence, Wang and housed the palace. The man in blue narrowed his small eyes into a line. "There are 4 people in the palace. We suddenly lost contact with 3 of them. Now only 7th Madam is here." Wang said respectfully, "Of the 3, one of them suddenly disappeared in the afternoon the day before yesterday. The other 2 were nowhere to be seen for the whole day yesterday. 7th Madam found out about this situation and immediately informed me. Until now there's still no news. It seems, if I'm not wrong, they should have been killed." "Hee. Not bad, not bad. You're really good." The leading white-haired man in blue laughed softly. "You're indeed the sword master. This move is really good. Really neat." Another man in blue said, 3 martial monarchs are gone without anyone noticing." Everyone's complexion became heavy. They looked at each other. Then the white-haired blue-robed man said, "If they're gone, then they're gone. Compared to our grand plan, the death of 3 martial monarchs is nothing. Moreover, it's worth it since we've probed the real situation. So it's true this time." The others nodded solemnly. "How's Lanrua now?" The white-haired old man suddenly raised his head and asked. "Duke Lanrua is now living in the old site of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion." The man in blue said, "The Grand Duke has already made preparations. He's prepared to befriend this person at all costs." "Yes," quickly informed the Grand Duke. At the old site of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, a blue-clothed young man with delicate features, a tall stature, and a tranquil and confident expression was walking out. If the people of the big clans of the upper 3 heavens were to see him, they would certainly be shocked. This young man was the first-in-line successor of the Lan clan, one of the big clans of the upper 3 heavens. The number 1 genius of the younger generation of the Lan clan, Grand Duke Lanrua. Lanrua, 28 years old. He could be said to be a dazzling new star in the Lan clan. Even among the younger generation of the big clans, he was one of the best. Among the younger generation of the big clans, he was ranked 3rd. Lanrua, at the age of 3, completed the Martial Artist Foundation establishment. At the age of 5, he killed people with a sword. At the age of 7, he reached the Martial Grandmaster level. At the age of 11, he reached the Martial Revered level. At the age of 14, he reached the Martial King level. At the age of 10, he reached the Martial Monarch level. At the age of 24, he was already a martial saint. Although this was due to the huge amount of resources from the Lan clan, his own talent and aptitude were also outstanding. At the age of 24, he became a martial saint, and was ranked 3rd in the land of the Grand Dukes. At the age of 28, he was already an 8th-grade martial saint. According to Lanrua's own estimation, the amount of heavenly treasures he had consumed since he was young could fill up 3 rooms. The number 1 expert of the younger generation of the Lan clan, the wisest, the most talented, and the number 1 cultivation maniac. For such a young descendant, the Lan clan would naturally provide all the best resources without any regard for their own lives. Furthermore, they would always carry out the most important missions. Just like this time, when Lan Macian accidentally discovered the divine dragon footprints of the Tribulation Sword Master, the Lan clan sent this number 1 expert of the younger generation to carry out this mission. If there was only one person in the Lan clan who was qualified to become friends with the Tribulation Sword Master and become one of the Tribulations, then this person would undoubtedly be Lanrua. The Lan clan was working on 2 fronts. Firstly, they would be on alert in the upper 3 heavens and wait for news from the lower 3 heavens. If Lanrua could pass on good news, Then the Long clan would get in touch with the Li clan immediately. The two clans would join forces and break off relations with the other 7 big clans. For 10,000 years of glory, the Li clan could disregard everything. The Long clan was also willing to take the risk. When Lan Rua walked out of the room, he shook his head and smiled bitterly. This place is not bad, it is really not bad. There are mountains and rivers, and the environment is elegant. That king of Hell Chu has good taste. I heard that this place was built by that Gu Duxing from the Gu clan of the upper 3 heavens. Not bad, it's really a good place. Chapter 1204. He agreed to come so easily? Lan Rua looked at the blue-robed man in front of him, somewhat surprised. For the Long clan to lie in ambush here, and wait for the heir to appear before inviting them in person, was undoubtedly the last resort, since they had no way of contacting the upper 3 heavens. However, Lan Rua himself also admitted that there were other ways to ease the tension in this matter. For example, sending a message, sending a letter secretly by flying sword, or sending an invitation. These were all methods commonly used by people in the martial world, or ordinary people. As for inviting him face to face, it was equivalent to directly telling the other party, "We know you are here, and we also know who you are. Therefore, you must fly here." It was more or less like forcing yourself on him and threatening him. Also, it was a show of force. Lan Rua knew himself very well. He was just a little uncomfortable about the matter between Chu Yang and Tai Butian, so he wanted to suppress Chu Yang a little. But when it came to jealousy, it was far from that. Lan Rua had always been proud and arrogant. When he made the decision, he knew that such an invitation might leave a bad impression on the other party, which might not be beneficial to his plan. But even though he knew, he still didn't change his mind. Because he was confident. The heavens are sealed. Of course we can't go up. But you, Chu Yang, are the same as us. We are all in the lower 3 heavens. You can't fly anywhere either. And on my side, there are several supreme martial artists and martial saints here. No matter how powerful you are, I can always suppress you. And in a place like the lower 3 heavens, if such an expert wants to find someone, there is really nowhere to hide. So Chu Yang, you can't run away either. Of course, the Long clan's first priority was to befriend the Tribulation Sword Master. Because by befriending the Tribulation Sword Master, the Long clan could continue to enjoy 10,000 years of glory. There were 2 ways to solve the Long clan's crisis. The first was to kill the Tribulation Sword Master. The second was to befriend him. But was it better to kill, or to befriend him? That was a question that even a fool could answer. If you befriend this person, your clan could enjoy 10,000 years of glory. If you killed him, you could only protect the riches in front of you. Then was it better to kill or to befriend him? As long as he wasn't a pig, there was no such question. Since they knew who the Tribulation Sword Master was, of course they had to befriend him. And they had to be careful not to act rashly. If the other party really didn't know what to do, it wouldn't be too late to kill him then. But before that, not to mention killing, he had to be careful with his words. Even if there was only the slightest chance of befriending him, he would still have to put in 100,000 points of effort. The greatest power of the Calamity Sword Master was that before his wings were fully developed, he was extremely mysterious. No one knew who he was. Now that he knew how to do it, was it up to him? Therefore, Lan Ruashin was also very certain. Therefore, this impolite invitation was sent out just like that. In his mind, after Chu Yang received such an invitation, Chu Yang would definitely not be able to do anything. He would definitely be fearful, panicked, and furious. He had thought of all kinds of possibilities, but this was the only one he hadn't thought of. The other party accepted it very calmly. Furthermore, he even specifically instructed that this banquet could not be too shabby. This made Lan Rua feel as if he had punched a pile of cotton. Alright, let me see what kind of person this Calamity Sword Master is. Lan Rua put his hands behind his back and stood at the edge of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, facing the lake. He muttered to himself in a low voice. Suddenly, he felt a sense of exhilaration, as if he had met his match. On the other side, Chu Yang was also thinking, this Duke Lan is obviously threatening me. Haha, just as well. If you didn't come looking for me, I would have gone looking for you. Anyway, my relationship with the Lan clan is already so bad that it can't be salvaged. It's rare that there's a guy like you who's secluded in the lower three heavens, who doesn't know anything, and comes here to be slaughtered. If I don't take this opportunity to slaughter you, how can I live up to the painstaking arrangements made by Lan Meisien and the Lan clan? As for threatening me, I don't even care about the elder master of the Lan clan, much less a little bastard like you. And a blind and deaf idiot at that? The sky was already dark. Lanterns were lit everywhere in Iron Cloud Citadel, and people were coming and going. The flow of people was endless. There were very few disturbances. It was obvious that under Tai Butian's rule, Iron Cloud Citadel was very peaceful. The people were kind and simple. Everyone went about their own business and didn't interfere with each other. The entire Tianyan restaurant was booked. Other customers were not allowed to enter. Everyone was guessing which bigwig was going to give a treat. He actually booked the best restaurant in Iron Cloud Citadel. What kind of earth-shattering figure was he going to invite? Lan Rua, dressed in a blue robe, stood in front of the restaurant to welcome the guests. His expression was calm and natural. One look, and you could tell that he was free and easy. He was like a dragon or a phoenix. Along the way, the young ladies who passed by kept stealing glances at each other. What a handsome young man. It's really a pity that he's not a prostitute. Behind him, 2 first-grade supreme martial artists stood quietly. For the Lan clan to put up such a lineup to welcome the guests was already an exception. It should be known that even if the sons of other Grand Dukes came to the Lan clan, Lan Rua would only send someone to lead them in. Lan Rua would only personally come out to welcome those who were really close to him. The night was getting darker, but Chu Yang still hadn't arrived. Lan Rua's expression didn't change, but he was already dissatisfied. Damn it, this bastard is so arrogant. After waiting for a while, there were already drunkards staggering out of the other restaurants nearby, but Minister Chu was still nowhere to be seen. No matter how well-mannered Lan Rua was, he couldn't keep his cool anymore. Are you sure? He said he's coming? He asked in a low voice. That's right. It's just that I don't know why he's not here yet. Behind him, that supreme martial artist expert replied without batting an eyelid. What an arrogant person. Lan Rua's lips moved slightly as he cursed under his breath. When have I ever waited for others like this? Right at this moment, the sound of horse hooves suddenly came from afar. A man on a horse came from afar like a gust of wind. Even on this busy street, he didn't slow down at all, and rushed over like a whirlwind. Lan Rua raised his head and saw a tall and big horse. It was snow-white all over, without a single blemish. The golden saddle and golden footrest shone brightly under the light of the lanterns. On the horse's back, a young man in black was riding. His eyebrows were like swords, his eyes were like bright stars, his nose was straight, and his eyes were bright and spirited. He rode steadily on the horse with his back straight like a mountain, his expression cold and arrogant. Just like that, he pursed his lips and galloped all the way. The golden saddle shone on the white horse, moving as valiantly as a shooting star. In the blink of an eye, the white horse reached the Tianyan building. The rider on the horse pulled on the reins. With a long neigh, the sturdy horse reared up and actually stopped just like that. Right in front of Lan Rua, not more than 5 feet. The moment the sturdy horse reared up, the horse's hind legs almost poked Lan Rua's face. A strange smell assailed his nostrils. The dust that was stirred up landed on Lan Rua with a whoosh. Lan Rua was furious. But before he could fly into a rage, the rider on the horse had already dismounted. His movements were extremely nimble, as he laughed heartily, and walked toward Lan Rua. Wahahaha. Is this Duke Lan? Forgive me, ha ha. I'm extremely sorry for being late, ha ha ha. Forgive me. Lan Rua frowned and forced a smile. You must be Duke Lan? Wahahaha. That's me. He laughed heartily and said, how embarrassing, haha. As the saying goes, people have 3 urges, haha. Before I came here, in order to feast on Brother Lan, I used a small amount of laxatives. I originally wanted to just empty my stomach, but I didn't expect the dosage to be a little too large. After several trips of defecation, I actually couldn't stop it. It's all watery. How embarrassing, haha. Brother Lan, is the meal ready? Lan Rua's expression was very interesting. Looking at this glib-tongued tribulation sword master in front of him, he had mixed feelings for a moment. His Adam's apple moved up and down along with his throat. He almost wanted to vomit. I invited you here for a meal. But before we started eating, you actually explained to me about laxatives and defecation? Who the fuck would be able to eat this? He even felt like throwing up. Not late, not late. Her. As long as you can come, I don't mind waiting for 3 days and 3 nights. Lan Rua smiled lightly and said. He had originally wanted to say this enthusiastically, but when the words were at the tip of his tongue, that enthusiastically emotion couldn't be aroused no matter what. Besides, if he opened his mouth too wide, he had the urge to vomit immediately. Thus, he could only say it so indifferently. Chu Yang laughed loudly. Brother Lan is too polite. If I had known that Brother Lan would actually stand here for so long just to wait for me, I would have held it in no matter what. It's all my fault, all my fault. Talking about defecation before eating, isn't this insulting? Haha, luckily Brother Lan is magnanimous and doesn't mind. As he spoke, he grabbed Lan Rua's hand and shook it enthusiastically. At the same time, Chu Yang's gaze was a little strange and heavy. He glanced at Lan Rua's neck, and then returned to normal. Lan Rua's expression was a little stiff. Looking at Chu Yang's hand, he thought of how this pair of hands had just wiped his but countless times. Why was he suddenly grabbing his hand now? For a moment, a certain smell seemed to assail his nostrils. Lan Rua's expression was a little forced as he forcefully retracted his hand. Since Brother Chu is here, please take a seat upstairs. He felt extremely depressed. How am I supposed to eat this meal? It's already good enough that I don't throw up. Chu Yang held Lan Rua's hand tightly and said emotionally, Brother Lan, you're so righteous. Brother Lan, the moment I saw you, I felt like we were old friends. It seems like I've already known you many years ago. Today, you and I must drink to our heart's content, and not return until we're drunk. Come, let's walk arm in arm. He actually pulled Lan Rua along and walked up. Lan Rua took a deep breath, and suppressed the restlessness in his stomach. Smiling, he said, Since that's the case, Brother Chu, please. Yes. We're all on the same side, don't stand on ceremony. And these two are your attendants? Go feed my horse first. This horse is a good one, you can't neglect it. Why? You don't believe me? Look at this horse's mane. It's just like Duke Lan's hair, shiny and shiny. Chapter 1205. The 2 first-grade supreme martial artists were instantly depressed. Since when did we become followers? And followers with such low status at that? Lan Rua's face darkened. The horse's mane is the same as my hair? Then what am I? Chu Yang, on the other hand, laughed and held Lan Rua's hand affectionately. The two of them walked up hand in hand. Seeing the two of them walking over hand in hand, the 2 supreme martial artists of the Lan clan smiled bitterly. After instructing the waiter of the restaurant to take care of this good horse, they shook their heads and followed. Lan Ruaxin understood it like a mirror. This person was Chu Yang, the king of Hell Chu whom the Iron Cloud Nation claimed to be dead. Now that he had reappeared here, and was even staying overnight in the palace, it was obvious that this king of Hell Chu was Tai Butian's lover. And according to Lan Meixian, that heavy pill was most likely given to Tai Butian by her lover. Then King of Hell Chu was most likely the Tribulation Sword Master. Not only Lan Rua, but even the 2 supreme martial artists behind him were also very clear-headed. Although this King of Hell Chu appeared to be courteous and cordial on the surface, as if he was about to reunite with his family after a long separation. In fact, he was extremely dissatisfied with the Lan clan's invitation this time. Otherwise, no matter how dissatisfied he was, he wouldn't have said such unbearable things in front of the people who were treating him before the meal. This was obviously a deliberate act of disgust, and it was disgust in all aspects. Moreover, his demeanor revealed a sense of fearlessness. This meant that he had already understood the purpose of the Lan clan waiting here. This was equivalent to indirectly admitting his identity as the Tribulation Sword Master. This gave them unlimited hope. Even if Lan Rua was on the verge of exploding with anger, he definitely wouldn't dare to say anything that would offend him. Lan Ruashin was indeed aggrieved and quite aggrieved. The entire clan had spent so much effort and time to set up such a plan. No matter from which aspect, she had taken the initiative. But when this king of Helchu came, and he used such a disgusting method, he didn't say a single word, but everything was clearly telling him. You are here, I know. Why are you looking for me? I know. I know your ultimate purpose too. So I have the final say. You are begging me, not threatening me. You'd better understand this point. He used such a disgusting hooligan method to completely take the initiative. Moreover, Lan Rua was willing to swallow this grievance without being able to do anything about it. When they finally arrived at the room, the two old men inside stood up with a smile to welcome them. Only then did Chu Yang let go of Lan Rua's hand. Only then did Lan Rua introduce him with a face full of smiles. Brother Chu, this is the 10th generation elder of our Lan clan. Orchid heart painting. He paused and said meaningfully. Old ancestor heart painting is currently middle stage supreme martial artist cultivation. This was vaguely oppressing. Moreover, he had the intention of testing Chu Yang. It was because Lan Rua had discovered something. He couldn't see through Chu Yang's cultivation. If one were to say that Chu Yang's cultivation was higher than his, Lan Rua wouldn't believe it no matter what. Therefore, if Chu Yang's cultivation was too low, it would be revealed immediately after these words were spoken. There wasn't a single person in Jianghu who wasn't sensitive to the word supreme. Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. He held Lan Rua's hand enthusiastically and shook it repeatedly. Elder Lan, I've heard so much about you. It's my honor to meet you today. This was the most common greeting, and also the most insincere greeting in Jianghu. Now, Chu Yang said it smoothly without any pause. It was obvious that there wasn't even the slightest bit of sincerity in it. The smile on Lan Rua's old face was especially bright. Minister Chu, you don't have to be so polite. It's only after meeting Minister Chu today that I know that we are already old. The Jianghu is now the world of the young. Her. Lan Rua smiled and continued to introduce the second person. There were 5 people from the Lan clan in the room. They were all famous experts. Towards Chu Yang's impoliteness, they didn't show the slightest bit of anger. This is the 25th generation elder of the Lan clan, Lan Chengfeng. Elder Chengfeng is now a 3rd-grade supreme martial artist. Lan Rua smiled amiably. His posture was as impeccable as a textbook aristocrat. Elder Lan, I've heard so much about you. It's my honor to meet you today. Chu Yang's voice was sincere and clear. This was what he said when he met that person. Now that he met this person, he actually repeated it again. The charm of this was too profound. Lan Qingfeng's face couldn't help but twitch. He smiled and said, Minister Chu is young and promising, tall and handsome. It's you who makes me hear so much about you. Chu Yang laughed. You flatter me. You flatter me. Unexpectedly, he accepted the compliment without any trace of politeness. Lan Rua only felt a breath stuck in his throat. At this moment, he suddenly regretted it a little. He really shouldn't have forced himself to invite Chu Yang here. He should have used a gentler method. This fellow was obviously taking revenge. But there was no use in regretting it now. He didn't expect this fellow to be so mischievous. He didn't even care about 2nd-grade supreme martial artists, who could turn the world upside down. These two are the 43rd generation elders of the Lan clan, Lan Moyan and Lan Mozhui. Both of them are 1st-grade supreme martial artists. Lan Rua's introduction was already a little weak. Ayya, the 2 elders Lan. Chu Yang opened his eyes wide enthusiastically. Then his tone changed. I've heard so much about you. It's my honor to meet you today. The faces of the 5 Lan clan members twitched at the same time. He really wanted to grab this guy's neck and ask him, do you know anything else other than this? After the introduction, Chu Yang still hadn't sat down. As if he was still waiting. Everyone felt a little strange. Then, they heard King of Helchu say, that. Brother Lan, aren't you going to introduce yourself? You don't know me? Lan Rua suddenly felt dizzy. You used the hand that you just used to wipe your ass to hold my hand, and walked for so long. You still don't know who I am? This wasn't Chu Yang's fault. Chu Yang really didn't know who this person whose hand he held for such a long distance was. He only knew that his surname was Lan, and that he was a duke of the Long clan. However, he didn't know that he was one of the many dukes of the Long clan. However, it was undeniable. A big clan. Chu Yang only disliked the dukes of the Long clan the most. One was Lan Chang'e, the other was Lan Ruoyan. This had already made Chu Yang completely sick of the so-called dukes of the Long clan. Chu Yang said apologetically, "Brother Lan, please introduce me. I'm ignorant. I only know that Brother Lan is an impressive person, but I don't know how impressive you are." "I'm Lan Ruo." Lan Ruo smiled amiably. He couldn't wait to swallow this guy whole. "I'm the current first successor of the Long clan." "Oh, so you're a big young master." Chu Yang laughed. He purposely used the word big a few times. This made Lan Ruoxin feel as if he had eaten a fly. "Minister Chu, please take a seat." Lan Xinhua smiled amiably and offered his seat. Chu Yang didn't stand on ceremony at all. Although he said that he didn't dare to accept it, he didn't dare to. Instead, he sat down on the highest seat, without standing on ceremony. "Everyone, please take a seat. Don't stand on ceremony with me." Chu Yang smiled and offered his seat to the others. Everyone was speechless. Who's treating? Who's treating? Why are you so generous?" "I'm really sorry. Brother Lan is treating. I should have come earlier. But at the last minute." Minister Chu had the spirit of not giving up until he disgusts people to death. He recounted his experience with diarrhea again. The 5 Long clan experts were dizzy from listening. They hadn't eaten yet, but they were already full. "Minister Chu." Lan Ruo stood up with a serious expression. He actually bowed. He said, "Little brother knows that our previous invitation has made Minister Chu uncomfortable. I'm here to express my deepest apologies to Minister Chu. I hope that Minister Chu can understand. Minister is deep in the palace, and we really don't have a chance. If we force our way in or sneak in, the misunderstanding will be even bigger. Please be magnanimous and forgive us." Lan Ruo was an extremely intelligent person. Chu Yang's performance was very forceful. He gained the upper hand by a show of strength right from the start. He didn't hesitate to belittle himself, just to vent his anger. He basically expressed Chu Yang's attitude. "I'd rather die in glory than live in dishonor." It was very clear and obvious. At this moment, if he didn't lower his head, there was no way to continue the conversation. He could imagine that when the dishes were served later, Chu Yang would still talk about his experience with diarrhea, and there wouldn't be any progress in the conversation. Not to mention any cooperation. Admit defeat? What I want is for you to admit defeat. If you don't admit defeat, I don't know what to do next. Chu Yang looked at Lan Ruo with some surprise on his face. He slowly smiled and said, "Since Brother Lan has said so, then I won't say any more." Actually, he was moved. It seemed that the Long clan didn't have any ability to transmit any information when the heavenly passageway was sealed. In that case, other clans couldn't do it either. Therefore, they probably didn't know that hundreds of Long clan experts were wiped out in Tianji City. In other words, now no matter from which aspect, he was the only one who knew the inside story. He had the complete initiative. In that case, weren't these people waiting to be slaughtered by him? The smile on King of Hell Chu's face instantly became warm and friendly. Since he had spoken, the atmosphere instantly became harmonious. Everyone chatted and laughed, talking about interesting things in the martial world. From time to time, they would laugh knowingly. Not long after the dishes were served, the Long clan eagerly urged Chu Yang to drink. Chu Yang didn't reject anyone. There were only 5 dishes, but the atmosphere was already in full swing. Everyone looked as if they regretted not having met earlier. The Long clan realized that as long as Chu Yang didn't mean to discuss people, he was actually a very interesting guy. Of course, as they talked, the topic gradually changed. One doesn't visit a temple without a cause. Minister Chu must know why we're here. Lan Ruo smiled warmly and filled Chu Yang's cup with wine. Chapter 1206. Chu Yang's words seemed to be a joke, but at the same time, it didn't seem to be. But these few people from the Long clan were obviously very well-mannered. Upon hearing this, they all burst out laughing, as if Chu Yang had said an extremely interesting joke. But everyone's heart skipped a beat. They knew that from the moment Chu Yang sat down until now, The initiative of the Lan clan had rapidly slipped into Chu Yang's hands, and he was getting more and more comfortable with it. Now that things had come to this, it would probably be difficult for them to reverse the passive situation they were in today. This time, the Lan clan had no choice but to do this. Lan Ruo said sincerely, "Brother Chu, please be understanding." Chu Yang knew that he was talking about the Lan clan arranging for people to wait for more than a year in advance. He waved his hand and said, "Let's not talk about this anymore. I still have to thank all of you for protecting Iron Cloud." Lan Ruo chuckled. His eyes flickered slightly. He gulped down a few more cups of wine. Under the influence of alcohol, he said either intentionally or unintentionally, "I really didn't expect that King of Hell Chu, who single-handedly overturned the universe back then, is actually the Tribulation Sword Master, whose name shook the world and dominated the destiny of the heavens. This is really a shocking event." Chu Yang smiled lightly and didn't say anything, but he knew that the highlight of the day was finally here. Seeing that Chu Yang didn't deny it, the few people from the Lan clan's eyes lit up, and they exchanged glances. "Looks like it should be him." Lan Xinhua smiled and said, "Ruar is still a little young. Actually, you should have thought about it long ago. Other than the Tribulation Sword Master, who else in this world can achieve such a shocking reversal of the situation of two big countries when he's powerless?" "Elder Master is right." Lan Ruo laughed. Chu Yang smiled bitterly and went into a daze. Looking at his expression, it seemed that he wanted to say something but held back. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. He picked up his wine cup and took a sip. His gaze was deep in thought. Faintly, there was also some confusion on his face. Lan Ruo, Lan Xinhua and the others were all stunned. They vaguely felt that something was wrong with Chu Yang. Sure enough, the next moment, Chu Yang sighed bitterly. Lan Ruo's eyes flashed and he laughed. "Brother Chu, one must enjoy life to the fullest. Why are you sighing?" Chu Yang smiled and said with some self-mockery, "Tribulation Sword Master? Haha, what a great reputation." Sigh. Lan Ruo, Lan Xinhua, and the others exchanged glances, their hearts thumping wildly. Chu Yang stretched out his right hand, and a clang sound was heard. A sword. It appeared in his hand just like that. The sword light was awe-inspiring and brilliant, just like the Sword Emperor. Sovereign's Descent. Calamity Sword. The five of them cried out in their hearts. Their eyes were burning as they looked at the sword. Their gazes were filled with fervor and reverence. Chu Yang's identity as the Sword Master. He could finally confirm it. This year's worth of preparations had finally not been in vain. At this moment, all five of them had the same thought. No one noticed that the moment the Calamity Sword appeared, a colorless and odorless mist melted into the dishes on the table. The fog had completely dissipated. Chu Yang let out a long sigh. With a flip of his hand, he put away the Sword of Calamity, looking desolate. He said, "It's true that this thing is a treasure. Since none of you are outsiders, and you know who I am, I won't hide anything from you. Haha. However, what you don't know is the identity of the Master of Calamity Sword. It's really the biggest trap in all of history." "The biggest trap in all of history?" Lan Ruo and the others were stunned. "That's right." Chu Yang drank a cup of wine and said bleakly, "It's true that the Calamity Sword can rule the world. However, without power, even with the Calamity Sword, what is it? What use is it? I only found out after I got the Calamity Sword. There is also a backlash." "Backlash?" Lan Ruo and the others were shocked. There was a backlash from the Calamity Sword? This was the first time they had heard of it. It was indeed mysterious. "That's right. The Calamity Sword has a mission. Once it recognizes its master, it starts immediately. If it can't complete it, its soul will dissipate, and it will never be able to reincarnate." Chu Yang's expression was solemn. "It's like a whip, lashing the Sword Master forward. However, to complete the mission, one has to unify the heavens. And to unify the heavens, one has to face the big clans. Haha, that's practically impossible." Lan Ruo comforted him sincerely. "There will always be a way. It's difficult." Chu Yang let out a bitter laugh. The five of them felt as if their hearts were on fire. "Difficult? It's precisely because you think it's difficult that we can do things easily. There's nothing difficult in this world. As long as you put your heart into it, there's nothing you can't do. Lan Rua comforted him. Brother Chu, there's no need to be anxious. You will succeed. How difficult? Chu Yang only shook his head. Brother Chu, this. Lan Rua felt that the time was about right. He decided to go straight to the point. Brother Chu, we can work together. He looked at Chu Yang's face. And Brother Chu should also be able to guess that the reason why we have been planning for so long in the lower three heavens is to work together with Brother Chu. This is the only reason. Chu Yang sighed. Of course I know. It's just that this matter is extremely dangerous. Even if the Lan clan helps me, the final outcome is very likely to implicate your entire clan. Brother Lan, you have to be careful about this matter. Lan Rua smiled confidently and said, Brother Chu, you don't have to worry about this. How can one who wants to achieve great things not have any sacrifices? He paused for a moment and asked somewhat anxiously, but how many brothers does the Lord Sword Master already have? Chu Yang revealed a warm smile and said, At the moment there are already 7. There were still 2 places left. Lan Rua was elated. At the same time he was also scared. So fast. Ever since the appearance of the heavenly phenomenon Tribulation Sword Master, it had only been 2 years, and there were already 7 tribulations. If he was slower by a step, then he wouldn't even be able to catch up to the heat. The eyes of Lan Xinhua and the others also lit up at the same time. There was really hope for the Lan clan. Lan Rua wanted to suppress the excitement in his heart, but he couldn't hold it in anymore. He raised his cup and said, If Brother Chu doesn't mind, I am willing to follow you and accompany you to create great things together. Chu Yang pondered and didn't speak for a long time. Everyone didn't rush him, and just waited quietly. However, everyone held their breaths. Chu Yang's reaction was very normal. Everyone was very assured. On the contrary, if Chu Yang agreed without hesitation, everyone would be worried. Tribulation. How could it be decided so easily? After a long while, Chu Yang smiled awkwardly and said, Brother Lan has really given me a difficult problem. The few brothers in the past all got to know each other unintentionally, and then went through trials and tribulations together, for a long time, before they acknowledged each other. Brother Lan is really the first to directly bring it up like this. Chu Yang shook his head and smiled bitterly. Lan Rua also smiled bitterly and said, I don't have a choice either. Brother Chu should understand my difficulties. Chu Yang nodded. Of course I understand. But this matter, can you let me think about it for a while? Anyway, we can't go up now. Let's just play around in the lower 3 heavens, and make a decision after a period of time. How about that? Lan Rua was overjoyed. That would be the best. He knew that since Chu Yang had said so, he basically wouldn't reject him. The following period of time would just be a test for him, and it would depend on his performance. Lan Xinhua and the others were also relieved at once. Speaking of social performance, how could Lan Rua, as the #1 Duke of the Lan clan, be bad? After such a long time, if he still couldn't get Chu Yang's approval after deliberately trying to befriend him, then Lan Rua should really buy a piece of tofu and kill himself. The atmosphere that followed was really lively. Everyone shook their cups and ate and drank to their heart's content. Their choice of words also seemed a lot more intimate. Lan Rua's performance was definitely praiseworthy. He didn't appear to be very eager or fawning. Instead, he was very sincere. Compared to earlier, there was obviously more closeness. However, he gave others a kind of feeling, I am me, I am one of a kind. This kind of feeling was the most pleasing to the eye. Lan Rua naturally had his own plans. Looking at the current situation, I naturally have the confidence to become one of the tribulations. However, there are also big and small tribulations. How should I raise my status and strive to become one of the top 3? Or rather, become the leader of the tribulations. That way in the future, I will be in existence like the Yi clan in the upper 3 heavens. As for the other clans, my Lan clan is such a powerful force. When we unify the upper 3 heavens, our foundation will also be 100 times stronger than those newly established clans. By then, where will there be any big clans? I'll just swallow up all those clans directly. During the meal, Chu Yang's gaze intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Lan Rua's neck a few times before he looked away. Everyone only thought that he was sizing up Lan Rua, and instead looked forward to it. This was even more so for Lan Rua himself. Every time Chu Yang's gaze swept over him, he would always act as if nothing had happened and talk cheerfully. He appeared to be brilliant, knowledgeable, elegant and charming. In the depths of Chu Yang's eyes, a hint of invisible heartache flashed past. He smiled and said, "Big clans are very powerful indeed. One could understand the meaning of a song." The moment he said this, Lan Rua instantly realized that the real test had come. Chu Yang was clearly probing him to see how much he understood about the big clans. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you be victorious in every battle. Big brother is right. Lan Rua changed his words very naturally. He smiled and said, "Big clans, every clan has 10,000 years of foundation. They are really not to be trifled with." Chu Yang listened with great interest. Oh, to Chu Yang, this was the first time that a core member of a big clan had introduced the clan's strength in detail, without any reservations. Chu Yang listened especially attentively. Lan Rua perked up. He said, "Let's take our Lan clan as an example." As he spoke, he started to introduce his clan eloquently, including the number of supreme martial artists, their cultivation levels, how much wealth, how much manpower, how many people could be of great use, how many people were both intelligent and brave, who was the most important person, and so on and so forth. He revealed everything big and small. Chapter 1207. Lan Rua really didn't dare to lie at all, nor did he dare to exaggerate at all, because he knew that every word he said now would be verified in the future. If Chu Yang felt that he had said something fake, by then the consequences would definitely be extremely severe. Chu Yang sat up straight and listened attentively. His mind kept on memorizing. These were all the most important information when he returned to the upper three heavens in the future. After all, an opportunity like today to be so open and honest was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, even for himself. Such a rare opportunity, he definitely had to cherish it. And Chu Yang realized that this Lan Rua was really a talent. The Lan clan, big and small forces, from top to bottom, so many people and so many things, were actually introduced one by him in an orderly manner. And it gave off a clear and orderly feeling. The most amazing thing was that he even interspersed some interesting stories of his seniors, so that the listeners wouldn't be bored or distracted. They could also naturally deepen their impressions of some of the names of his seniors step by step. What a talent! Among the big clans, our Lan clan isn't considered strong. Brother Chu, you need to pay attention to this. This time, Lan Rua was really speaking from the bottom of his heart. Our Lan clan should at most be ranked 7th. Ranked first is the Yi clan. From what I know, Lan Rua started to talk nonstop about the other big clans. One could tell that the Lan clan had also put in a lot of effort in this aspect. He was very familiar with each and every name. Then it was the Xiao clan, the Cheng clan, the Zhuge clan, the Li clan, and so on. Lan Rua was very eloquent. He moistened his throat with wine and talked nonstop. The rest of the people were listening quietly. The 4 supreme martial artists of the Lan clan had smiles on their faces as they looked at Lan Rua somewhat comforted. At this moment, Lan Rua was an examinee taking the college entrance examination, and the 4 supreme martial artists of the Lan clan were accompanying him. They were the parents who were accompanying their children to the exam. Everyone was equally excited and gratified. How could they be impatient? When they encountered some problems that they couldn't explain clearly, they were even extremely anxious. They wished that they could treat him with their bodies. But everyone knew that that wouldn't do. That would make Chu Yang look down on Lan Rua completely. The Tribulation Sword Master's observation of the tribulation. At the thought of this, the 4 supreme martial artists couldn't help but feel that their eyes were about to brim with tears. In conclusion, big brother, little brother against big family clans. In my heart, I have a ranking. Lan Rua smiled modestly. Go ahead, Chu Yang praised. Well, no matter which aspect you look at it from. The Yi clan's strength was without a doubt the number 1 clan. The second was the Xiao clan. The fourth is the Li clan. The 5th is the Ling clan. As for the Long clan and the Chung clan, they are ranked 7th. This is really a tie. The 8th is the Shi clan, and the 9th is the Zhuge clan. Lan Ruo reminded him. Although the Zhuge clan is ranked 1st, the Zhuge clan is not the strongest clan. However, the Zhuge clan was ranked based on their martial prowess. If they were to be ranked based on their intelligence, the Zhuge clan would undoubtedly be number 1. Furthermore, the Zhuge family has the mysterious ability to detect the secrets of the heavens. They should not be underestimated. Chu Yang nodded slowly. Regarding Lan Ruo's ranking, Chu Yang had a coincidental feeling. What's more, it was basically the same as Yu Lingshua's assessment of the big clans. Of course, just 5,000 years ago, the Dharma Supreme gathered the leaders of the big clans. He instructed them to cultivate a secret force to go against the Tribulation Sword Master. Hundreds of years ago, the Dharma Supreme gathered them again for this matter and made arrangements again. This is the biggest secret. Therefore, each big clan still has 2 secret teams or 1 team. After all, this team is the biggest secret of each clan. Outsiders, even the direct descendants of the clan, probably don't know much about it. Lan Ruo said. As for the Long clan, the Elder Master only told me about it before we came to the lower 3 heavens this time. Well, in this case, the big clans should have more than 1,000 supreme martial artists on the surface. If we add the secret force, it should be more than 2,000? Chu Yang frowned and asked. More than that. This number should be doubled, Lan Ruo said resolutely. At the very least, the secret force of the Long clan has 370 supreme martial artists. Although their levels are not high, there is no doubt that they are supreme martial artists. Those below the level of supreme martial artist are not qualified to enter the secret force at all. This is the real trump card of each big clan, Lan Ruo said solemnly. Then it's close to 5,000. Chu Yang took a deep breath of cold air. Zi Xieching had killed 700 supreme martial artists at one go in the battle at Mount Xingyun. Chu Yang had thought that the big clans had already suffered great losses. He didn't expect the secret force of these big clans to be so shocking. In that case, if I want to complete the mission of the Tribulation Sword, I need to face 5,000 supreme martial artists. Chu Yang took a deep breath, his face somewhat pale. No, big brother, not you but us. Lan Ruo smiled. I swear to follow big brother to death, so the Long clan is of course the same. Excluding the 500 supreme martial artists in our clan, we only need to face 4,500. Moreover, if we are not careful, our 500 people can at least kill 1,000 of the other party, or even 1,500 of them. This is a conservative estimate. Lan Ruo smiled conceitedly. We can't underestimate the enemy. Chu Yang took a deep breath and lamented internally. What a pity. If you had said this before I became sworn enemies with you, I would definitely have made use of it. By then, it wouldn't be as simple as killing 1,000 of them. But now, as long as the heavenly passage opens, you will know everything immediately. By then, even if you kill me 10,000 times, you will still find it too little. Besides, other than the 370 supreme martial artists in your clan, there are only slightly more than 100 supreme martial artists left. But at Mount Xingyun, 70 of the 150 supreme martial artists have already been eliminated. Little brother, your information is inaccurate. The enemy is too strong. Chu Yang's expression was grave. Very strong indeed. Lan Ruo also took a deep breath. Our path won't be easy. Chu Yang smiled. It's still not too late for you to turn back now. Does big brother see me as a fickle villain? Lan Ruo put on a displeased look. As long as I follow big brother, no matter how dangerous it is, we will walk down the path together. Chu Yang looked at Lan Ruo and sighed. You must be prepared. Many people will die. Lan Ruo raised his head and said dispassionately, I'd rather die than regret. Good. What a good rather die than regret. Chu Yang shouted. Come, let's have a toast. Big brother, please. The two of them raised their wine cups, stood up, raised their necks and drank the wine in one gulp. Then, the two of them faced each other and laughed loudly, full of the feeling of knowing each other. The four supreme martial artists present all had a feeling of hot tears in their eyes. Finally, I passed the exam. Chu Yang was smiling on the surface, but he was sighing and feeling pity in his heart. In the whole world, no one knew better than him what a huge mistake the Long clan had made. What a huge opportunity they had missed. The Long clan was the only clan in the whole heavenly layer that could be 100% sure of surviving. The Long clan was really too close to the Tribulation Sword Master. The teacher of the Tribulation Sword Master's mother was Lan Meisien of the Long clan. The teacher of the Tribulation Sword Master's wife was Lan Meisien of the Long clan. The two main forces of the Tribulation Sword Master now, Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro, had a close relationship with the Long clan for thousands of years. Even if the Long clan didn't do anything and just waited, Chu Yang wouldn't do anything to them. Even if they did, as long as they didn't go overboard, Chu Yang would tolerate it. Even if he didn't do it for the sake of the monk, he had to do it for the sake of the Buddha. He couldn't get past his mother and wife. But now there was no turning back, no turning back. The Long clan first used despicable means to destroy the emotional ties with Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro, completely breaking the relationship between both parties. The pursuit after Tianji City made the Moon Breeze couple hate the Long clan to the core. In Tianji City, they even used all kinds of despicable means to plot against Chu Yang, making use of Chu Yang and becoming enemies with him. And that Lan Chang'e actually used Wu Qianqian, who was in love with Chu Yang, to set a trap for him. This was even more intolerable to Chu Yang. They even secretly plotted against the Tribulation Sword Master, with the Long clan participating in the whole process and guarding it strictly. Of course, the identity of the Tribulation Sword Master had never appeared in the upper three heavens, so the Long clan's reaction could be said to be an act. But they didn't expect that Chu Yang, whom they had been plotting against and making use of in Tianji City, was the Tribulation Sword Master. Now they knew that Lan Meisien had betrayed Tai Butian and sent people to wait for him in the lower three heavens. If they really wanted to be on good terms, only Lan Rua alone would be enough. That way, although dangerous, would show more sincerity. But why did Lan Rua come with four supreme martial artists? He was like a louse on a bald man's head. It was obvious that if the cooperation failed, he would completely destroy the Sword Master of Calamity Sword. Kill him. If the Long clan didn't have such an idea, even a fool wouldn't believe it. Step by step, the Long clan could be said to have made one wishful thinking after another. However, what made people vomit blood the most was that no matter which plan it was, it would all end up with nothing, pushing them closer and closer to their own destruction. They were also getting further and further away from Chu Yang, the Tribulation Sword Master. There was another reason: Shadow. Chu Yang thought highly of Shadow, who had protected Tai Butian back then. Although the two of them were from the Long clan, they were loyal to Tai Butian and treated Tai Butian as their own. They had unlimited kinship. If Tai Butian had ever felt kinship from anyone in her life, it would undoubtedly be them. Chu Yang had always admired the two of them, but this time they went missing. Chu Yang asked Tai Butian, but Tai Butian didn't know either. And the time when they went missing was when Lan Rua and the others had just come to the lower three heavens. When they met just now, Chu Yang could sense that there were two pieces of jade hanging on Lan Rua's neck. They were the treasures of heaven and earth, the mysterious Yang jade. That was why he looked at Lan Rua's neck several times. Every time he looked, his heart ached. Chapter 1208. Mysterious Yang Jade. One of the world's most miraculous medicines, mysterious Yang Jade essence. Since ancient times, only Chu Yang had the mysterious Yang Jade essence. Only a few people in the entire world possessed mysterious Yang Jade. Moreover, Chu Yang was the one who had given them away. When he first got the mysterious Yang Jade essence, Chu Yang had given one to each of the two shadows. The one that he had given to Tai Butian was still hanging around his neck. Then, whose was the one hanging around Lan Rua's neck? Where did Shadow go? Shadow knew that he had given Tai Butian the heavy elixir, but Lan Rua only found out after meeting him. This meant that Shadow knew, but didn't say anything. But Shadow's jade was with Lan Rua. Where did the two of them go? This was almost an obvious matter. Chu Yang immediately figured it out. After Lan Ruo came down, the first thing he did was to question the two shadows and get to the bottom of it. But the two shadows refused to say anything, and in the end, they were killed by Lan Ruo, and the mysterious Yang Jade naturally ended up in Lan Ruo's hands. Otherwise, Shadow would never have left him. The mysterious Yang Jade was of vital importance to the two of them. It was even more useful for regulating their bodies. How could he give away such a miraculous treasure? Chu Yang wished he could kill Lan Ruo with one slap right now. What interest did he have in cooperating with him? All these things directly announced one thing. No matter how hard the Lan clan worked, no matter how much they tried to curry favor with him, the Lan clan was already sentenced to death by Chu Yang. There would be no change. The Lan clan had unintentionally built a good foundation to get closer to the Tribulation Sword Master and continue to prosper for another 10,000 years. But they had also intentionally destroyed all these. How could this not be called fate playing tricks on them? If the Lan clan knew about this, there would definitely be a lot of people who would vomit blood and die from regret. This meal went on until late at night. Chu Yang benefited a lot from it. Against the power of the big clans. For the first time, he had a direct understanding. This trip was not in vain. Until the music was about to end. Only then did Chu Yang pick his teeth and ask, "How many people came down with you this time?" 14, including me. 15 people. Lan Ruo laughed bitterly. But big brother, you're really fast. Out of the 4 people in the palace, you've already killed 3. Ah! Chu Yang was shocked. I killed those 3 people. Are they all your men? He stomped his foot and sighed. Ayaya. I saw them sneaking around the palace, and their cultivation was so high. So I killed them. I didn't expect that they would be my own people. This is too embarrassing. I'm fine. Lan Ruo swallowed his broken teeth and blood as he said with a smile. It's their fortune to be able to die in Big Brother's hands. Big Brother, don't worry about it. How can I not care? Chu Yang was displeased. He said guiltily, "Do you want me to kill another one tomorrow? Even if you don't care, I care. This is all our strength. How about this?" He paused and said, "Tomorrow wake everyone up. I'm going to meet everyone. After all, we still need a long time in the lower 3 heavens. How can we do things if we don't know each other?" Lan Ruo thought for a moment. He said straightforwardly, "All right. Let's do as Big Brother says." With a smile he said, "I'm staying at the old Heavenly Armament Pavilion where Big Brother used to live. If you're free, you can get Feng Qiliang to bring you here. Let's have a good gathering." Chu Yang agreed at once. "It's settled then." He smiled and said meaningfully, "Lan Ruo, we're not idling around in the lower 3 heavens." Lan Ruo was agitated. "Big Brother can just tell me if there's anything." Chu Yang patted him on the shoulder. "When everyone is here tomorrow, I'll make specific arrangements." All right. Lan Ruo was overjoyed. He finally got Chu Yang's acknowledgement. What kind of specific arrangements would there be tomorrow? Lan Ruo couldn't help but look forward to it. The current Lan Ruo would never have thought that what Chu Yang meant by, "When everyone is here tomorrow, I'll make specific arrangements," was to arrange for them to report to hell. Big Brother, where are the other brothers? Lan Ruo couldn't wait to build a good relationship with Chu Yang. Only when he saw the other tribulations with Lan Ruo, be sure that his identity was truly confirmed. Chu Yang smiled. "They're all in the lower 3 heavens. Then how did you come down, Big Brother?" Lan Ruo was rather perplexed. "I came down more than a year ago. During this period of time, I've been in seclusion in a secret place." Chu Yang smiled warmly and said, "When you have time and the matters in Iron Cloud Citadel have come to an end, I'll bring you to that place. There the spiritual energy is so abundant that it's almost materialized. Your cultivation will definitely be able to progress by leaps and bounds." "Yes, I'll bring you to hell. There the spiritual energy must be abundant. As for whether you can progress by leaps and bounds in that place, I really don't care." "Thank you, Big Brother." Lan Ruo was overjoyed. What followed was naturally a back and forth drinking to their heart's content. The more they drank, the more they felt that they weren't outsiders. They spoke more freely. Under the influence of alcohol, Lan Rua also felt that he was no longer an outsider to Chu Yang. He couldn't help but crack a little joke. Leaning close to Chu Yang's ear, he said softly, "Big brother, hee. You've been making love with His Majesty these few days, hasn't it?" Ha ha. Murderous intent surged wildly in Chu Yang's heart. He laughed loudly. "You're still young. If you say such things again, I'll get angry." Lan Rua laughed loudly. In Lan Rua's mind, if he had a woman like this, the pleasure of having the ruler of a country under his crotch and having her at his disposal would be unparalleled. If Chu Yang were in his shoes, and someone joked about it like this, it would be like scratching an itch. Putting himself in Chu Yang's shoes, Lan Rua naturally thought that since they were all men, Chu Yang would definitely be the same as him. He would definitely be extremely pleased with himself. But he would never have thought that Chu Yang could joke about anything. But he would never joke about his own woman in front of outsiders. Chu Yang wouldn't joke about his family in front of outsiders. Parents, brothers, women. Joking about anything. This was Chu Yang's biggest taboo. Lan Rua's gentle words, which he thought was a way to close the distance between them, and a heart-to-heart conversation between brothers, completely ignited the murderous intent in King of Hell Chu's heart. That night, no matter who it was, they all went their separate ways happily. Chu Yang rode on his white horse. Under the attentive waving of the 5 people from the Long clan, they agreed on a time to meet the next day. Then he rode off reluctantly. Behind him were the 5 people from the Long clan, who couldn't conceal their excitement. "What do you think?" Lan Rua watched as Chu Yang's white horse disappeared into the dark night and asked solemnly. "There shouldn't be any major problems." Lan Xinhua heaved a sigh of relief and said, "He obviously still has some reservations. But this also shows how cautious he is. As for what he said tonight, I don't see any problems." "I think so too." With his hands behind his back, Lan Rua said indifferently, "If he wants to unify the heavens, he needs help. The current tribulation hasn't matured to the point where he can help him. Therefore, our suggestion today should be an act of sending charcoal in the snow." "Yes. That's why Chu Yang didn't mention his dissatisfaction with our invitation earlier on," Lan Qingfeng added. "That's right." Lan Rua was somewhat regretful. "I really should have used a different method to ease the tension. From this, we can see that this person's character is also ordinary. He is undoubtedly somewhat rash and irritable. But for now, it's already very good. The key lies in his future performance." Lan Xinhua consoled him. "He should have something to do in the lower 3 heavens. When that time comes, you and he can do it alone. We won't participate. If we participate, this will affect his mood and perception too greatly." "That's right. That way, he will only think that I'm a young master who only relies on the clan," Lan Rua muttered. "But I, Lan Rua, am not that kind of person. Besides, it's easier for the 2 of us to cultivate friendship when we're alone." But in his heart he thought, "Friendship? How much is friendship worth? Everything will be clear tomorrow." Lan Xinhua was relieved. He smiled and said, "Tonight we can finally have a good sleep. I wonder how happy the clan will be when they know about this." A reserved smile appeared on Lan Rua's face. Tomorrow would be the best start. The foundation of the Long clan's 10,000 years of foundation would be laid tomorrow. Lan Rua was filled with an excited sense of accomplishment. Tai Butian sat on a chair, her right hand supporting her cheek as she waited quietly. The little fellow had already obediently returned to his room to sleep. Tai Butian originally thought that the little fellow wouldn't be able to take it. But she didn't expect the little fellow to be so independent. He actually slept so soundly in his own room. Right now, Tai Butian was waiting for Chu Yang's return. She was like an ordinary farmer's daughter, waiting for her husband to return from work. "If you and I were just ordinary people, I would definitely spend the rest of my life with you. No matter when, as long as you returned home, you would see someone waiting for you." Tai Butian was lost in her thoughts, her face flushed red. Before this, she really didn't expect that there would be a day when she, the ruler of a generation, would willingly remove her disguise, change into red makeup and wait wholeheartedly for someone's return. Such a day was something that she didn't even dare to dream of. Now that Chu Yang was here, everything became a reality. "Chu Yang, Little Tian Tian likes you. Tai Butian muttered to herself in a daze. But the moment the words left her mouth, she was so embarrassed that she wanted to crawl into a hole to hide herself. How mushy! The lights on the table flickered, illuminating the room in red. For some reason, Tai Butian didn't touch any of the things that Chu Yang had set up last night, including the carpet, red candles, tassels and so on. Tai Butian allowed her bedroom to remain as it was, without any changes. Her new home, her own happiness. She hoped that she could keep it for a longer time. Chapter 1209. It was already late at night, and that guy still hadn't come. Tai Butian was a little frustrated. She opened some memorials and prepared to reply to them, giving herself something to do. But she just couldn't calm herself down. That bastard had disappeared without saying a word in the afternoon. Where had he gone to fool around? She was waiting for him here. But if he really came, what was he going to do? Thinking of this, His Majesty's pretty face blushed with embarrassment. With a creak, the door opened. A figure flashed into the room. "You're back." Tai Butian was in the midst of replying to memorials. She held the brush but didn't write for a long time. But the moment Chu Yang opened the door and entered, there was an immediate effect. She didn't hold the brush properly and tapped it hard on the memorials. "Why aren't you asleep at this late hour?" Chu Yang was a little puzzled. Then he understood. "Are you waiting for me?" "Bah," Tai Butian retorted. "I'm not waiting for you. I'm dealing with memorials." Yes. Dealing with memorials. Good things." Chu Yang chuckled and walked over. As he approached, Tai Butian felt uncomfortable all over, as if she had gone soft for some reason. "Your Majesty, it's late. Don't be so busy." Chu Yang hugged her slender waist from behind. His lips moved close to her small, sparkling ear. He gently sucked on her earlobe and nimbly used the tip of his tongue. "Let me serve your Majesty in bed, okay?" Who wants you to serve me?" Tai Butian resisted weakly. But the next moment, there was already a soft exclamation. That pair of big, warm hands. They had already reached into her waist, one in each hand, holding the peaks in front of her chest and kneading them gently. Tai Butian went limp all over at once. "Don't mess around. I'll deal with the memorials first." "You can deal with them. I won't hinder you from doing your work," Chu Yang said sanctimoniously. But his 10 fingers were nimbly moving around. He was fondling her perky buttocks. Occasionally, he would pick up the 2 cherries and gently rub them a few times. The creases in front of Tai Butian's royal robe were very obvious. One could clearly see a pair of hands mischievously messing around inside. Tai Butian supported herself weakly on the table with both hands to prevent herself from collapsing. His voice trembled as he said, You're causing trouble like this. How am I going to handle official business?" Chu Yang was playing with the 2 little white rabbits. He was addicted to them, but he couldn't help but be startled when he heard this. "Oh, then I won't mess around anymore." As he spoke, he actually pulled his hand out. Tai Butian heaved a sigh of relief, though she still felt a little disappointed. She said, "You first, ugh." Before she could finish her sentence, she let out another soft exclamation. That was because Chu Yang wasn't fooling around here. Instead, he had gone somewhere else to fool around. His 2 hands slid down from her waist to her soft buttocks. He gently caressed them and followed the streamline to her thighs. Biting her ear, he whispered, "Can I fool around here?" Panting heavily, Tai Butian clamped her legs tightly together to stop those hands from moving around. Her voice trembled as she said, No. Hurry up and pull them out." "I want to pull it out, but you are clamping it so tightly. How can I pull it out?" Chu Yang pretended to pull his hand out. Tai Butian hurriedly let go of her legs and said angrily, "Hurry up." There was a startled exclamation. Chu Yang had taken advantage of the moment when her legs were separated, and instead of retreating, his hand slipped inside. It was right at the sensitive area. "No, I really can't." The Emperor was so embarrassed that she almost died. She subconsciously clamped down hard. "You can't do this and you can't do that. What exactly should I do?" Chu Yang seemed to be angry. He suddenly pulled his hand out. Tai Butian thought that he was angry and couldn't help but panic a little. She explained, I'm not. Chu Yang was indeed angry. He reached out and pulled the emperor over. He pressed his hand on his leg. With a tearing sound, he tore open the emperor's robe and lifted it up. Then, he raised his right hand and slapped the emperor's delicate buttocks. Although he didn't use much force, it still made Tai Butian cry out in embarrassment. She didn't expect that this bastard would actually dare to take off her pants and hit her buttocks. A strong sense of embarrassment and inexplicable feelings suddenly rose in her. It was as if she had been conquered by her own man. Then Chu Yang's hand stopped there. He obviously enjoyed it very much, but he had to pretend to be angry. Do you think that you can reject your own husband's reasonable request just because you're the emperor? I didn't. Tai Butian hurriedly defended herself. Humph, Minister Chu snorted. But you're clearly saying no. Which wife in the world is like you? You're too disobedient. If you don't believe me, you can go out and ask. Other women would never reject their husband's requests, especially in this aspect. Chu Yang was full of nonsense. But how could Tai Butian have the nerve to go out and ask about this? Wouldn't that be too embarrassing? Chu Yang continued to complain. As the emperor, don't you know about this? It's like this in the world. Otherwise, why would they say that wives treat their husbands like gods? Especially when it comes to bed matters. It's all the more absolutely cooperative. Whatever the man says, it's done. Whatever position he says, it's done. Whenever he says he wants, it's done. This concerns a man's great self-esteem, his greatest dignity. Therefore, I can't be careless at all. Now that all ordinary men in the world are so dignified, how can I, as the emperor's man, be inferior to other men? This really hurts my self-esteem. Chu Yang said very solemnly and seriously. Tai Butian was in a daze. She couldn't help but feel a little apologetic. She said apologetically, I'm sorry. Then do you still dare to do it in the future? Asked Chu Yang. I don't dare to anymore. Tai Butian turned over and swallowed her anger. In the future, I'll listen to you. I'll be like other women. You can do whatever you want. After she finished speaking, she lowered her head in embarrassment. Really? The king of Hell Chu's eyes lit up. Really? The emperor's voice was shy, but she was very sure. Chu Yang was just using this as a pretext to make a fuss. He was just playing around, and didn't expect to get such an unexpected reward. He was really overjoyed. He carried her up and the next moment, they were already on the big bed. Let's try other positions today, like this. After the deed was done, Tai Butian's face was flushed. She leaned against Chu Yang's chest and panted heavily. Her entire body had turned into a puddle of mud. Her entire body. She didn't even want to move her little finger. She was really scared. This guy actually still looked like he wasn't done yet. He actually wanted to continue. If he really went on like this, today's morning court session would be delayed again. Tai Butian looked out the window and couldn't help but moan. What morning court session tomorrow? It's already time. But I'm like this. How am I going to attend the morning court session? Just as she was thinking about it, she felt the pair of hands hugging her becoming mischievous again. Below her body, something also started to shake its head. Tai Butian was just about to let out a cry of surprise when Chu Yang covered her mouth with his. No. Don't. Sigh. I'm really the most worthless man in the world. Alright. That's a good girl. Next, it was spring in the room again. Only the emperor sighed in her heart. This guy really got me into trouble. The emperor didn't attend the morning court session again. But this time, the officials received the news early. But everyone was still a little worried. Many people dispersed. But there were also a few who paced back and forth with furrowed brows. They didn't leave even when the sun was high up in the sky. Footsteps sounded in the distance. The Minister of Internal Affairs, Feng Qiliang, came with a few little eunuchs. They came over with nothing to do. Minister Feng. An official came forward to stop them. He asked somewhat worriedly, Minister Feng, His Majesty hasn't attended the morning court session for 2 consecutive days. Could something big have happened? Feng Qiliang chuckled and shook his head. It's nothing big. After saying that, he was about to leave. The official stopped him again. What exactly happened? Seeing that he couldn't leave, Minister Feng looked around mysteriously. He leaned close to the official's ear and said in a low voice, Lord Lu, His Majesty has taken in a new cough. Noble consort these 2 days. Noble consort? Oh, I understand. A relieved smile finally appeared on Lord Lu's face. He nodded repeatedly, his old face wrinkled from smiling. His Majesty is really suffering. Ever since the Empress passed away, he hasn't. Haha, this is a good thing. Haha. Rest assured. The few officials strode away, and finally left with peace of mind. Chu Yang, who was on his way to find Feng Qiliang, hid in the dark. He almost fainted from holding his breath. Noble consort? Minister Chu's face darkened immediately. He walked out a few steps. Minister Feng? Qiliang. Feng Qiliang was startled. He nodded and bowed. You. Hello. I'm not good. Chu Yang said angrily. I've already become a noble consort. Feng Qiliang opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything. God took pity on him. He had just casually said something and swore to God that he had only said this one sentence in the past few days. The person involved actually heard it. Chu Yang snorted a few times and said, Bring me to the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Feng Qiliang was shocked. For this matter, he had already walked back and forth dozens of times outside the bedroom early in the morning. This lord had finally come out. He talked as he walked. Qiliang, how did you become a eunuch? It's rare that your cultivation is so high. Could it be that you know the Yin shrinking technique? How did you escape the strict inspection of the palace? No. You don't have to hide it from them. It's a long story. I haven't. Oh, what a pity. I'm used to it. I heard that you have a total of more than 20 people this time. So many? No, a total of 15 people, haha. So there are 12 more? They're still very strong. In front of you? I don't dare. After some questioning, Chu Yang confirmed it. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.